Chapter 102. What a pity! What a pity! It would be great if June Moxie had died. It would have made June Moxie's heart ache for a while, Lady Ewer said while gnashing her teeth. She seemed to be extremely regretful when she heard that June Moxie hadn't died. June Moxie, who was in the cabin, carefully searched his mind. He was very puzzled. He didn't remember offending this Lady Ewer. So, why does this woman's tone sound as if she had been raped by June Moxie 100 times? Lord Lu pondered for a moment and then said, "This matter has already reached this point. So, I'll put an end to the matter of hiring you to assassinate the princess for the time being. Moreover, I've successfully obtained the Xian beast tendons. So, I'll try to arrange for you to leave Tianxiang City. Haha, as for the rest of the matter, I will report back to Master and see how he will arrange it. Perhaps he will cooperate with your noble hall again. I will trouble you to send my regards to the Blood Sword Hall Master when you return. Also, I will say this. Although this matter has failed, the second master is still very grateful." When he said the last sentence, his voice suddenly became extremely solemn. Obviously, these were the words of the so-called second master. June Moxie silently curled his lip. Who doesn't know that the so-called second master is the second prince? Why do you all look so mysterious? Thank you, Lord Lu. I will certainly convey your message. As for how to leave, we have other ways. We will take our leave now. Then, the three men stood up and cupped their hands in salute. The Xian beast tendons have been placed in the hands of Lady Ewer. 30 tendons are not a small number. We will come back to take back what belongs to us. Lord Lu chuckled and said, "You're welcome. When you return, I would like to ask if the Hall Master has considered the matter regarding the assassination of a certain emperor. No matter what the result is, please inform us as soon as possible. I'm counting on you." Yes. The three of them filed out and disappeared into the night in a flash. Lord Lu and the others did not go out to see him off. Lady Ewer, after that incident, the palace has already undergone a major purge, and the three of you have lost quite a bit of manpower. However, this is not a big deal to us. After all, no matter how one looked at it, this matter was caused by boss's people. So, you have to finish what we agreed on as soon as possible. Once the news spreads, arrange as many people as possible to go in. Remember, it must be one-way communication. Lord Lu lowered his voice and said hurriedly, "Yes, Lord Lu and Second Master can rest assured about this. We have prepared for a long time, and the ones we have chosen are all virgins." Lady Ewer's gentle voice sounded, "Gidge, Lord Lu, if not for Second Master's important matter, even you would like to go to the palace to play for a few days. Haha, with Lady Ewer's outstanding beauty, who could resist your temptation?" Lord Lu laughed and lowered his voice. "Second Master has instructed us to make crossbows with Xian beast tendons as soon as possible. They may come in handy at any time, and cannot be delayed for even a moment. This matter is very tense at the moment, and all parties are watching us. So, it is not convenient for us to come forward. Everything is in your hands now." Lady Ewer replied in an embarrassed manner, "Of course I know this, but these Xian beast tendons are too rare. If we use ordinary steel as the material, I am afraid that it will not be able to make the best use of them. But we cannot find the Divine Weapon Catalogue in the capital to make them. Although the Divine Weapon Catalogue is excellent in craftsmanship, it is a pity that a tall tree attracts the wind. The only one that can do this business is Jiangnan's Zhao Trading Company. I have already sent people to contact them before the auction, but I have yet to receive a response. Well, the sooner this matter is settled, the better. I would rather pay double the salary, but it must be done as soon as possible." Lord Lu cautiously said, "This kind of thing will be of great use to us in the future. Second Master has spent a sky-high price, and even took a great risk to ask the Blood Sword Hall to exchange for these Xian beast tendons. We cannot afford to have any mishaps. This subordinate is naturally aware of this. Lady Yuer smiled gently and said, Lord Lu, I do not know what the outcome of the matter that I asked second master for. Lord Lu's tone was quite difficult as he said, Lady Yuer, that Jun Zhan Tian is the pillar of Tianxiang's military. It is easier said than done to assassinate him. Even the Blood Sword Hall's hall master, a person who dares to assassinate a princess and a prince, is still hesitating on this matter. If we use second master's men to frame Jun Zhan Tian for treason, it will definitely be effective since His Majesty is furious after Jun Zhan Tian's ruckus in the capital. Lady Yuer's tone was extremely resentful. Even in my dreams, I dream of Jun Zhan Tian's family being destroyed. This is obviously an excellent opportunity. How can second master let it go so easily? That will not do. Lord Lu flatly rejected this proposal. If we make a move against Jun Zhan Tian, at least half of Tianxiang's military will be mobilized. We can target Jun Zhan Tian himself, but we cannot target his men. Second master does not want a fragmented Tianxiang kingdom. That Jun Zhan Tian has caused the destruction of my country and my people. Hearing you say this, could it be? Lady Yuer's tone was somewhat disappointed. If second master cannot do this for me, then why should we rely on him? How dare you? Lord Lu sternly scolded, and then immediately slowed down his tone and said, Lady Yuer, this matter cannot be rushed. The Blood Sword Hall is currently hesitating. Wait until they have finished their business in the Yutang Empire, and the leaders of the Blood Sword Hall will meet. At that time, second master will certainly have a way to make them submit. The three leaders of the Blood Sword Hall all have the cultivation of Tianxian, and are the most mysterious leaders. It is said that they are super experts on par with the Supreme Shen Xian. Dealing with a mere Jun Zhan Tian is definitely not a difficult matter. Besides, Jun Zhan Tian is already at the end of his life. What's wrong with letting him linger on for a few months? Lady Yuer snorted, still somewhat indignant, but did not utter another word. Jun Moxie's heart shook. They are actually planning to assassinate my grandfather. As for the assassin organization, the Blood Sword Hall, the three leaders were all at the Sky Xian realm, and they even have the Supreme Shen Xian as their leader. However, due to the fact that he was in the water, the originally tranquil surface of the lake couldn't help but let out a slight splashing sound. Although the sound was so soft that it could not be heard, Jun Moxie immediately felt that something was wrong. Who? He only heard a stern voice, There is someone under the boat. His tracks have been exposed. Jun Moxie did not have much time to think. His body turned around, and his feet fiercely stomped on the bottom of the boat. His whole body suddenly shot out from the bottom of the water like a huge swordfish, and rapidly swam into the distance. With a loud bang, the top floor of the pleasure boat was torn apart. A figure with a golden body mixed with a faint yellow light soared into the sky, and flew 50 feet high. His eyes were like thunder and lightning as he swept around, and found the figure of Jun Moxie, who was rapidly moving away from the bottom of the water. A golden light flashed, and he landed back on the boat. Then, he grabbed the boat's long bamboo pole, and with a shwa sound, it flew out of his hand like a black lightning, and shot towards Jun Moxie's figure under the water. At the same time, his body flew high into the air, and followed the direction of the bamboo pole. His clothes fluttered in the curtain of the night, and his body flickered with a golden light, as if a deity had descended to earth. It was Lord Lu, the peak of the gold level. Just half a step more, and he would be at the Earth Xian level. Jun Moxie swam away like a flash of lightning, and suddenly felt a heavy pressure on his head. The water around his body seemed to have suddenly solidified, and at the same time, he felt a huge sense of danger enveloping him. In a split second, his hair stood on end. Without even turning his head, Jun Moxie could clearly feel that this danger was aimed at his back. If he couldn't avoid it, there would definitely be a big bloody hole in it. At that time, he would probably have to go through another transmigration if he still had that kind of luck. In a flash, he mobilized all the power in his body, and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was fully activated. Suddenly, he felt the pressure on his body decrease, and his body leaned to one side. His chest stuck out and his buttocks protruded. His waist suddenly bent, and his whole body became disjointed, and became a standard's shape. What a devilish figure, with the curves of the front and the back! Schwa! The bamboo pole, which was more than 4 feet long, almost brushed past June Moxie's skin. It pierced through his clothes and even his underwear, and stuck deep into the mud. June Moxie only felt a chill on his thigh, and a sharp pain, and a few curly hairs suddenly floated into the water. If the bamboo pole had deviated by half an inch, perhaps June Dashao would have had to serve His Majesty the Emperor. Suddenly, his scalp went numb. An ordinary bamboo pole was only 2 feet long, but the Spirit Fog Lake was deep, and the bamboo pole was relatively long. June Moxie struggled, but the bamboo pole was stuck between his clothes and his skin, and unexpectedly did not move. With a flip of his right hand, a small flying dagger appeared in his hand, and with a chi sound, he was freed. The 2 pieces of his robe were like 2 butterflies, and in the middle was a white body. If it was a woman, it would be very attractive. In the sky, the figure emitting a golden light was swiftly and violently swooping down. Before he reached the surface of the water rippled, and the calm surface of the water sank deep, forming a whirlpool. Even the bamboo pole that was stuck deep in the mud was exposed. June Moxie was at the bottom of the water, and his eyes were wide open as he looked at the figure swooping down from the sky. He snorted in his heart, and suddenly straightened his body, and fiercely rushed up. "Ah, don't worry, I am not rushing up to fight with this Gold Xian Peak expert, who is still an insurmountable mountain to me." His body rose like an arrow, and in the instant that he was about to break the surface of the water, he suddenly pushed with his left hand, and a water arrow shot out, shooting towards the figure in the sky. His other hand grabbed the bamboo pole, and his body dropped 1,000 caddies. At the same time, he rapidly swam in the opposite direction, and activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. With a wung sound, the bamboo pole, which was as thick as a calf, was unexpectedly pulled into the shape of a bow, and issued a ka-ka sound, which made one's teeth ache. When the pole was bent to the extreme, June Moxie's accumulated strength was exhausted, and he suddenly let go, and his naked body swam away at an extreme speed. Chapter 103. June Moxie had already figured out that this person threw the bamboo pole. Firstly, it was to kill him, but there was also another intention. That was, in case the throw failed to kill him, he could use it as a foothold. This could be seen from his falling posture. Although he was falling fiercely, he was falling with both feet. If it was an ordinary expert in this situation, they would usually fall head down and feet up. That way, their speed would be twice as fast as this person's current speed. This also meant that this Lord Lu, this high and mighty peak gold-level expert, did not know how to swim. This was what June Moxie had analyzed in that instant. Therefore, he immediately chose to pull the bamboo pole to the side. As long as he pulled the bamboo pole away, he would have nowhere to borrow strength after falling down. Then, even if he drowned, he would not be able to catch up to him. But June Moxie did not expect that not only was the bamboo pole very tough, the mud at the bottom of the lake was also deep enough. He could not pull it out and could not break. Seeing that the person was about to fall, he could only let go and swim away naked. His naked body was like a big white fish with a bit of jet-black water-grass in its mouth. That Lord Lu had already planned it out. This eavesdropper only knew how to escape, so he was definitely not a powerful character. He could deal with him. Although he did not know how to swim, with the bamboo pole as a foothold, he could attack or defend. If it really did not work, he could just turn around and return to the boat. Therefore, he did not have any scruples. The moment the bamboo pole left his hand, a water arrow shot towards him. Lord Lu waved his sleeves and immediately swept it to the side. This way, he could easily test the opponent's strength and felt more at ease. But who knew that when he neared the surface of the water, he swept his eyes around and found that the bamboo pole head that was just flashing in front of him had actually disappeared. This caused him to panic. His body was in the air, and his strength had already been exhausted. Like a moth flying into a flame, he fell into the water with a splashing sound. Just as he fell into the water, before he could regain his senses, he saw two big white buttocks not far in front of him slipping into the depths of the water. He could not help but be furious. Right at this moment, he suddenly felt a change in the flow of water in front of him. With a buzzing sound, a long bamboo pole rapidly bounced back along with the turbulent flow of water. If he knew how to swim, he would naturally be able to dodge in time. However, he didn't know how to swim. He was flustered when he fell into the deep water. How could he care about these things? With a "paw" sound, the bamboo pole hit him hard between his legs. Before he could let out a heart-wrenching scream, his body instinctively bent over. Then, the head of the bamboo pole hit his forehead with a bang. With a blood-curdling screech, Lord Lu was smashed into a somersault. Under the tremendous force, he flew out of the water with a splendid splash of blood. Like a dried salted fish, he flew straight towards the direction of the pleasure boat. The last remnant image in his mind was actually that pair of big white buttocks swaying in front of him, really very white. From the pleasure boat, another slender figure flew out nimbly. Unexpectedly, it was a brilliant silver light. Lady Yuer's body flashed and caught Lord Lu's body in her hands. Then, she flew back into the boat. It turned out that there was a rope tied around her waist. Lady Yuer returned to the boat and looked into the distance with a complicated expression. The person who was eavesdropping had already disappeared without a trace. In front of her was a dense patch of reeds. In this pitch-black night, after this delay, even if she wanted to chase after him, she would not be able to catch up. The previously awe-inspiring Lord Lu was now lying at his feet, unconscious and on the verge of death. On the other side of the hidden reeds, June Moxie climbed ashore with lingering fear. Taking advantage of the darkness, he ran away naked. In his heart, he rejoiced. If not for this injury and the advancement of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, I'm afraid I really would have died this time. That was really close. With a bang, he knocked down a satisfied customer who had just come out of the brothel. His legs were weak as he walked down the road. June Moxie nimbly tore off the man's clothes and hastily put them on. Then, he disappeared like a wisp of smoke. On the ground, a fat, naked body was lying on his back. A small earthworm-like thing was tilting its head to one side. It was extremely ugly. The June family's 8 bodyguards frantically searched for their young master. They were well aware of the seriousness of this matter. If Grandpa June were to find out about this, the 8 of them would not be able to escape the crime of failing to protect the young master. If something were to happen to this young master, they did not dare to think about it anymore. Only when night fell did the 8 of them return. Just as they reached the main gate, they saw a person who looked like their young master hurriedly walking towards them from the other side. Why did they say that he looked like their young master? Because that person was wearing an extremely ill-fitting robe. His appearance was a complete mess. Although June Dashao was a complete debauchee, his appearance was not bad. Therefore, he paid great attention to his appearance and would definitely not be as sloppy as the person in front of him. Perhaps it was because the person looked similar? However, the 8 bodyguards looked carefully and simultaneously cried out in surprise, unable to contain their joy. This person looks like our young master, but he shouldn't be our young master. Isn't this young master June? Who else could it be? What's wrong with the 8 of you? In the afternoon, you were actually scared silly by that girl Raimu's shitty bodyguards. I called out to you several times but you didn't respond. Jun Dashao shook his head as he hurried on with his journey. He had a look of exasperation on his face as he said, "Isn't he just a primary Tianxian expert? How could he scare you to such an extent? Looking at you in a daze made me angry. So, I simply left first." The 8 bodyguards suddenly recalled that they had indeed been absent-minded for a moment after Yi Gohan's angry roar. Could it be that at that moment, the young master had called out to us but we didn't respond? Then, he had angrily left on his own? They looked at Jun Moxie dumbfoundedly, and their minds were in chaos at the same time. They hadn't even thought to ask him, "Since you left alone, why did you return at the same time as us? We have been looking for you everywhere in Tianxiang City for a long time. Where have you been for such a long time? Also, what's the matter with that fat and vulgar robe that only a nouveau riche would wear? Also, why does your hair seem to be wet? Don't just stand there, hurry up and give me the blazing heart meridian." Jun Moxie's foot had already hurriedly stepped through the door, and he commanded without turning his head. The bodyguards woke up as if from a dream. They mechanically moved their feet, and followed the mysterious young master inside. Almost everyone was wondering how the young master's legs were so fast today. Was he possessed by a ghost? Jun Dashao's robe was still empty, and it was extremely cold and uncomfortable. He had to quickly change his clothes, in case others found out that he had actually been swimming naked, running naked, and then stripping another man. Once he returned with his clothes, Jun Mosie's illustrious reputation would be lost in the spirit fog lake. The Jun residence's door was tightly closed behind everyone. It was already late at night and the bright moon was in the sky. Jun Wui was still sitting in his wheelchair, quietly waiting for his nephew's return. The soft moonlight in the sky sprinkled on his resolute face, and his eyes were calm and profound. Hope, extravagant hope, hope, or perhaps despair. The courtyard door opened, and Jun Moxie, who had changed into his own robes, walked in with a smile on his face. Jun Wui slowly turned his wheelchair, and very calmly looked at Jun Moxie. He looked up and down, and found that there was no problem, and was relieved. "I heard that you were in the limelight this afternoon at the magnificent Jewel Hall?" "Yes," Jun Moxie bluntly said. "The magnificent Jewel Hall is too arrogant." Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. When the third uncle mentioned the magnificent Jewel Hall, why did he pause in the middle? His tone was also not right. Jun Wui lowered his eyes and was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "Do you know, when I heard the news I broke out in a cold sweat? Your grandfather looked fine on the surface, but I know that he was afraid. Monsieur, uncle knows that you are quite courageous, but unless it is necessary, unless it is a matter of life and death, do not have any conflict with the magnificent Jewel Hall. The magnificent Jewel Hall, our Jun family cannot afford to provoke them, at least for the time being. Do you understand?" This sentence was said very slowly, almost one word at a time. It was really hard to imagine that such soft words could actually come out from the mouth of such a strong man. Jun Moxie was also startled, and slowly sat down in front of him and said, "Third uncle, this is not something you should say. Is the magnificent Jewel Hall really so terrible? Even you are afraid of them." Jun Wui turned his head away, and did not let him see the look in his eyes, and coldly said, "If it was only me, I would naturally be able to provoke the magnificent Jewel Hall. Even if it is 100 times more powerful than the magnificent Jewel Hall, so what? Life only has one life, grass only has one spring, the worst that can happen is death. And you're the same, Emosia. I know that you're courageous and insightful, and you're not afraid of the heavens or the earth. This is something that I'm very pleased with. But I feel that you don't have a strong sense of immersion in your family. So, I hope that you can promise me, no matter what happens, you must remember that you are the son of an aristocratic family. Behind you, there is also a huge family with deep roots, the Jun family. The family, in the vast majority of the time, will be your greatest help, but sometimes it will also be your greatest hindrance. Junwoo raised his head, his eyes were bright, but seemed to contain a lot of unexplainable things. As long as there is hope for the family, we must not give up. This is the glory of an aristocratic family, and also the sorrow of an aristocratic family, but also the responsibility. June Moxie was silent for a long time, and then he smiled and said, "I understand. It's good that you understand." Junwoo gently smiled. "Because of this matter, I have been waiting for you all night. Now that you understand, accompany me for a drink." "Drink?" "For the time being, I am afraid that Uncle will not be able to drink for the next 10 days to half a month. Because I want to congratulate third uncle, the 5 kinds of medicinal herbs have now been prepared." June Moxie smiled. "And the pulse diagnosis golden needle, as early as half a month ago, has also been prepared. Third uncle, in another 10 days, this thing you are sitting on can be dismantled to make a fire, and on the day of the fire, you can also cancel your taboo." Chapter 104. Junwoo's hand trembled and the wine in his cup spilled out. He silently looked at the wheelchair handle in his right hand and stared at it for a long time. He could only feel his heart tumbling like a stormy sea. 10 years of disability. Today, a glimmer of hope had finally arrived. Junwoo remained silent until he left, not uttering a single word. 3 days later, Jun Tian directly sealed the door. He passed down an order. From today onwards, no one is to be seen except by His Majesty's decree. If anyone dares to take a step into the inner courtyard, they will be killed without question. The atmosphere of the entire Jun family suddenly became as if they were facing a formidable enemy. It was so tense that it was hard to breathe. The door to the inner courtyard was tightly shut. Outside the door, 2 rows of bodyguards stood with their swords unsheathed, reflecting the blazing sun in the sky, shining brightly. Shadows flickered in the shadows. The power of the Jun family that once shook the capital was once again displayed at this moment. Moreover, this time, all the core forces that had followed Jun Tian for decades were mobilized. Each and every one of them was absolutely trustworthy and loyal. Even those who had the slightest suspicion would be excluded from this operation. This time, Du Ju's treatment must be handled by all possible and impossible external threats, not even the slightest bit slack. A huge iron basin was placed in the middle of the inner courtyard's 4-zhang high wall. The volume of this iron basin could be said to be a small reservoir. It had long been filled with water and had been set up. A raging fire was burning beneath it. 6 burly men were constantly adding firewood, causing the water surface to bubble slightly. Jun Tian was dressed in a green robe with a solemn expression on his face. He wore a pair of strange gloves on his hands, which completely covered his hands and arms. Not even the slightest bit of his skin was exposed. He paced back and forth in the courtyard, appearing extremely restless. On the other hand, the white-robed Junwoo was calm, as if he had broken away from the shackles of his soul overnight. Jun Moxie was at the side. There was a big jade plate on a table. His 2 hands quickly placed the 9-leaf grass, macaroni, and continuous severing root on the jade plate in a certain order. Then, he pounded out the juice and let it flow down the slope into a wide-mouthed jade bottle. His movements were abnormally fast, but the order was orderly. Finally, Jun Moxie shouted, "Third uncle!" Junwoo's entire body shook, and the bright yellow xian qi of the earth rank shook fiercely. The robe covering his body instantly swelled and exploded into pieces. Jun Tian picked up his body and spread it out. Jun Moxie shouted in a low voice. In a flash, he smeared the residue of the medicine evenly on every part of Junwoo's body. He did not let go of even the slightest bit of privacy. The 5 kinds of herbs in Jun Moxie's prescription were all highly toxic. Any one of them was a poison that would kill the moment it touched blood. Although there were only 3 of them mixed together, the moment the dregs were smeared on Junwoo's body, Jun Wui felt as if he was suddenly thrown into a raging fire. He felt a searing pain from head to toe. He let out a muffled groan and clenched his teeth. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The pain of 3 great poisons on his body at the same time was unimaginable. But this pain was only the beginning. After smearing the dregs, Jun Moxie did not pause for a moment. He picked up the jade bottle of medicine and skillfully pinched Jun Wui's chin with his left hand. Jun Wui's tightly clenched teeth suddenly opened. He could not help but let out a muffled roar. Jun Moxie had already poured the contents of the jade bottle down his throat. Jun Wui didn't have enough time to react, and the bottle of liquid had already flowed down his throat. This liquid was very fierce, and it felt as if a ball of fire was burning down his throat. Jun Wui couldn't help but let out a muffled groan, and couldn't help but shout a few times to vent the pain in his body. Jun Mo Xie had just opened his mouth when Jun Mo Xie grabbed a white cloth that he had prepared earlier and stuffed it into his mouth. Jun Zhan Tian trembled. Jun Moxie's smooth and skillful movements were no different from those ruthless officials who were used to using torture. In fact, he was even better. Jun Zhan Tian could not bear to watch anymore. How could he watch his grandson torment his son? This is a necessary measure. Under extreme pain, even the most persevering person will show signs of blurring consciousness. If the mouth is not stuffed, it is very likely that the person will bite off his tongue under the intense pain. Jun Moxie picked up the intestine-cracking flower beside him and smashed it into pieces. He actually managed to take a break from the busy situation and gave an explanation. Suddenly, the 3 great poisons simultaneously flared up in Jun Wui's body. Jun Wui's naked skin turned purplish-black in an instant. At the moment when the color changed, the intestine-cracking flower's dregs had already scattered on his body. Jun Moxie's movements were extremely fast. He pulled the white cloth out of Jun Wui's mouth. The next moment, the intestine-cracking flower's venom had already entered his throat. Jun Wui didn't even have time to react before the white cloth was stuffed back into his mouth again, this time tightly gagged. Jun Wui only had time to let out a muffled groan. His eyes were almost protruding out of their socket. Both his eyeballs were bloodshot. It was as if blood had penetrated his pupils. The intestine-splitting flower's toxicity had flared up at the same time as the other 3 poisons, and was rapidly spreading from the inside to the outside. Jun Wui felt a burning pain in his dantian, followed by an excruciating pain that seemed to be burning his soul from 10 years ago in his dantian. At this moment, the 5 poisons in Jun Wui's body, 1 old and 4 new, started to circulate at the same time. They attacked and resisted each other. His naked skin turned colorful in the blink of an eye. His waist and legs, which had not felt anything for 10 years, felt as if their bones were being sawed by a blunt knife. Finally, the hidden poison that had been hidden for 10 years was forced out. Jun Moxie breathed a sigh of relief. His eyes were fixed on the thing between Jun Wui's legs. At this critical moment, Jun Moxie's mind unexpectedly came up with a strange thought. It doesn't seem to be as big as mine. Just as he was thinking about this, Jun Zhan Tian suddenly shouted excitedly, Get up! Get up, ah! His white beard trembled as he pointed at his son's crotch. Sure enough, that thing was shaking its head. Suddenly, it flapped its head and shot up to the sky. It almost hit the nose of Jun Zhan Tian, who was bending over to check. Jun Zhan Tian's thing had not been used for more than 10 years. Today, it suddenly rose up. Naturally, it was extraordinary. Jun Moxie, who was holding the blazing heart meridian in his hand, was startled by Jun Zhan Tian's shout. He almost fell to the ground. He rolled his eyes and reprimanded, It must get up. If it can't get up, doesn't it mean that the treatment has failed? Really? Is it worth making such a fuss about? Grandpa Jun hiccuped again and again. He didn't care that his grandson was actually reprimanding him. Instead, his face was full of joy. This thing had recovered. It meant that his son, who had been disabled for 10 years, had regained the basic functions of a man. Not to mention anything else, at least he could reproduce for the June family. For Grandpa June, who had always been brooding over his only son, June Moxie, this was simply a great blessing. June Wui's lips trembled. The muscles on his face twitched in pain. At this moment, a feeling of extreme shame welled up in him. June Jean Tian was once a famous iron-blooded man, a warrior who had been through hundreds of battles. But now his remaining consciousness looked at the two people, one old and one young. They were actually staring at his uncontrollable treasure. Under the pain and shame, he simply let out a muffled groan and directly fainted. Out of sight, out of mind. Two grown men, one old and one young, staring at the treasure under the crotch of a strong man? That old man, he simply wanted to reach out and fiddle with it. How could he let people live? This was not something that a normal man could tolerate. Although he was his grandfather, June Jean Tian was still in his 30s, wasn't he? Several men who were ferociously adding fuel to the fire stretched out their heads to look. After looking, their faces were full of shame. They lowered their heads and desperately added more firewood. The great general was indeed worthy of being called the great general. Although he hadn't used it for 10 years, he was still as majestic as ever. Inferiority. Finally, the surface of June Wui's skin changed from a variety of colors to a large patch of bright green. Now is the time. June Moxie roared and pulled out the white cloth. His left hand quickly pinched June Wui's chin. His right hand used the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to break the jet-black blazing heart meridian's skin. Suddenly, the black juice gushed out and dripped into June Wui's mouth. Then, he stuffed his mouth again. This time, he used another piece of white cloth to tie a knot at the back of June Wui's head. In this way, even if June Wui was beaten to death, there would be no way for him to spit out the white cloth. After finishing, June Moxie threw the blazing heart meridian's skin to the side. His right hand activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune and placed it on June Wui's chest. Pure spiritual qi surged into his body. June Wui's body started to swell up at a speed visible to the naked eye. His meridians and blood vessels started to protrude on the surface of his skin. They were crooked and looked like countless small purple earthworms. They were ferocious, terrifying, and extremely nauseating. June Moxie shouted. June Jean Tian stretched out his hand and a sky-blue xian qi sprayed out like a dream. A bamboo raft the size of an ordinary person flew into the cauldron. At this time, the water in the cauldron was close to boiling. June Moxie shouted. Suddenly, both of his hands supported June Wui's body and floated up into the air. June Wui's body fell flat and landed on the bamboo raft. June Moxie let out a clear whistle. His body floated down on the edge of the cauldron. His body suddenly bent down and spread out his hands. June Jean Tian could clearly see that at this moment, June Moxie's hands had suddenly produced dozens of shining silver needles out of thin air. The silver needles flashed and the first needle was inserted into the Baihui acupoint. His movements were clean and neat, without the slightest bit of hesitation. Even with June Jean Tian's calmness, his whole body trembled. That was the most fatal acupoint of the human body. Unable to bear it any longer, he closed his eyes and rubbed them. In the short moment that he rubbed his eyes, the silver needles in June Moxie's hands had already shot out. All of them were inserted into the major acupoints of June Wui's body. There was no lack of fatal acupoints. Then, with a light whistle, June Wui's body flipped in the air and landed on the bamboo raft, exposing his back. June Moxie spread out his hands and another dozen silver needles appeared in each of his hands. In a flash, they were all inserted into June Wui's broad back. With a sigh of relief, June Wui pulled out the bamboo raft with a schwa sound and threw it out. June Wui's body directly tumbled into the boiling water. As the temperature of the water slowly rose, the sound of boiling water could be heard from the surface of the cauldron. As the water boiled, The pores of Jun Wui's body and the 7 orifices of his head continuously exuded a jet-black liquid. In just a moment, the large cauldron of water had been dyed as black as ink. Chapter 105. Jun Tian's eyebrows twitched wildly, his eyes wide open. This method of curing poison was something he had never seen or heard of before. However, the fact that Jun Tian did not die after being pierced by needles was enough to prove that this method of treatment was effective. However, looking at his own body of old ribs and then at the boiling water in the pot, Jun Tian could not help but shiver. If I were to go in, even with Tian Xian's protective Xian Qi, I reckon that I would not be able to hold out for long. I might even be cooked in a short while. The few burly men adding firewood were also sweating profusely. Not only because of the heat but also because of the fear. This is too crazy. To actually put a living person into a pot of boiling water and cook him like this? What if the person is cooked to death? With this temperature, it would be difficult not to cook him, right? Jun Moxie was still standing firmly on the edge of the pot, his eyes unblinking as he watched Jun Wui's body tumbling in the water, closely watching every change. His face was calm, expressionless, almost cold. Suddenly, Jun Moxie did not hesitate to put his left hand into the boiling water and scooped up Jun Wui's entire body. His hand was covered in a layer of blisters. Half of it was scalded by boiling water, while the other half was corroded by the poison. However, Jun Wui's body was the complete opposite. In fact, his skin was now fair. In fact, that terrifying and strange color had already faded from his skin. With a swoosh, he flew down and landed beside Jun Tian. Just as Jun Tian caught him, Jun Moxie pressed his right hand on Jun Wui's dantian and activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. After a long time, Jun Moxie's face became paler and paler, while Jun Wui's face became rosier and rosier. Finally, the golden needles in Jun Wui's body were forced out bit by bit. They shook and trembled. Finally, with a piu sound, a silver needle flew out along with a stream of black blood. Then, the next one. Finally, the silver needle on the Baihui acupoint flew out with a qi sound, bringing with it a thin stream of blood. It was actually 6-colored. Jun Moxie grunted and slowly retracted his palm. He sat cross-legged and slowly adjusted his breathing. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Before he withdrew his palm, Jun Wui suddenly opened his eyes, and 2 sharp rays of light shot out from his eyes. Light blue. It was light blue. What does this mean? All the poison had been removed. The seal was broken. Jun Wui's 10 years of accumulated Xian Qi burst out, coupled with the huge effect of the blazing heart meridian. In this short moment, his Xian Qi was directly promoted from the middle level of the Earth profound realm to the initial level of the Tian Xian. In the blink of an eye, he had risen by 3 levels. Not only that, but under the effect of the blazing heart meridian, Jun Wui was immune to all poisons. A super-strong expert was born. Seeing this light blue light, Jun Tian suddenly jumped up high. His mouth opened wide, and his eyes bulged as if he had seen a ghost. His right hand unconsciously exerted force, and with a cry of pain, he actually pulled out a lock of his beard. He had practiced hard for most of his life, and now he was only at the middle level of the Tian Xian. Although his disabled son was once known as a martial arts genius, but for him to be able to rush to the middle level of the Earth profound realm at his age was already quite commendable. Not to mention, he was seriously injured and spent 10 years in a wheelchair? Just like that, the moment the seal was opened, he directly rose to the Sky Xian realm like a rocket. This world is really crazy. Jun Tian shook his head, his heart feeling very confused. 3 parts of joy, 3 parts of relief, 3 parts of excitement, and half of fear. The last part was that he suspected that he was in a dream. On one hand, he was so happy that he wanted to sing and dance. On the other hand, He was so shocked that he was speechless. For a moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings, and he was actually unable to speak. Even if he was really in a dream, he wished that he would wake up from this beautiful dream a moment later. Jun Wui clearly felt that his legs, which he had not felt for 10 years, had a strange feeling of numbness and itchiness. At the same time, he also felt the smooth flow of Xian Qi through his meridians, and his heart was suddenly moved. I can finally stand up again. My old enemy, I, Jun Wui, will look for you in the near future. I will look for you to collect the debt you owe me. His body moved, and he wanted to stand up and experience what it felt like to walk on 2 legs again. Third uncle, you still need to sit down for the time being. Don't move, please be patient for a while. Jun Moxie's tired voice came from behind him. At this time, you still need to calm your mind and circulate your Xian Qi. Firstly, the Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal strength is enormous, and the toxins have already been expelled from the body due to resisting the previous 5 poisons. However, the internal benefits have all remained in third uncle's body. If you do not resolve it as soon as possible and use it for your own use, it will not be good. Secondly, third uncle's lower body has not moved for 10 years, and his blood vessels are blocked. He still needs to circulate it 360 times before his blood vessels can flow smoothly as he wishes. Only then can he be safe. Jun Moxie closed his eyes and slowly said, "This kind of moment of ecstasy was a big obstacle on a person's path of cultivation. If one were to seize the time to meditate and consolidate his mind in this situation, it would be of great benefit to his future cultivation and spiritual realm. It must be known that the 500-year-old Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal strength was enormous. With its own strength, it could fight poison with poison against the old and 4 new poisons in Jun Wui's body. The toxicity of the Blazing Heart Meridian could be imagined. However, in addition to its toxicity, the Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal strength was also extremely outstanding. Its effect was in no way inferior to the poison. In Jun Moxie's medical case, the original plan was to fight poison with poison and use the Blazing Heart Meridian's poison to forcefully resist the other 5 poisons. Then, with the help of boiling water and silver needles, he would expel the poison in one fell swoop. There were no accidents and it was quite smooth. Next, he should have used the Blazing Heart Meridian's powerful medicinal strength to nourish his body. However, it would take half a month before he could fully recover. After all, Jun Wui's body had been crippled for a long time. With such a huge nourishment, it was inevitable that he would not be able to withstand it, so he had to slowly recuperate. But a few days ago, Jun Dashao discovered that his own mysterious art of unlocking heaven's fortune, in addition to recuperating himself, could also be used to help others. Moreover, the effect was great. Looking at the memories of his 2 lives, there was no cultivation method that could be compared to it. Moreover, it had a wonderful effect. It was not afraid of all poisons in the world. It really lived up to its name of good fortune. Jun Dashao thought about it and changed his original plan. After dispelling the poison, he would directly use his own strength to nourish Jun Sanye's body. Not only was this method effective, it was even more remarkable. In just a short period of time, Jun Sanye had been reborn. The huge benefits of the Blazing Heart Meridian had nowhere to vent, so it was converted into Xian Qi and integrated into Jun Sanye's body. Jun Sanye had been in seclusion for 10 years, and the results were not mediocre. The 2 Xian Qi and true essences were instantly fused into one, and this Xian Qi and true essences were equivalent to an ordinary person's cultivation for at least 50 years. This explained why Jun Wui had been disabled for 10 years. Although he had painstakingly cultivated Xian Qi for 10 years, it was impossible for him to recover and become a Tian Xian expert. All of this was due to Jun Moxie's good fortune mysterious art, which allowed everything to flow smoothly. Jun Wui's body paused for a moment, but he did not dare to neglect. He sat down and tried his best to control the myriad of emotions in his heart. He tried to calm himself down and immerse himself in cultivation as soon as possible. Even so, it took him 10 times more time than usual to finally stabilize his mind. The Xian Qi finally began to flow according to the normal route, and he slowly entered into a state where he forgot about himself and everything else. Jun Moxie had only meditated for a moment, but the art of unlocking heaven's fortune that he had consumed was quickly replenished by the Hongjun pagoda. Slowly getting up, he came face to face with Jun Zhantian's excited eyes. "Emo xie." Jun Zhantian looked at his grandson in a daze for a moment. Suddenly, tears streamed down his face. He was unable to say a single word. Despite his age, the white-haired Grandpa Jun was crying bitterly like a child. For so many years, the famed general who had caused enemy monarchs and generals to flee upon hearing his name had actually lost his composure like this? Jun Moxie's heart ached, and he lowered his head in dejection. For so many years, who could understand the bitterness in this old man's heart? What kind of pain and suffering had he endured? Originally, he had a house full of children and grandchildren, a happy and harmonious life. His position was high, and he was above tens of thousands of people. Suddenly, 2 of his sons died on the battlefield, and the only remaining son was crippled for life. How unbearable was this for a father! Losing his father in his youth, his wife in his middle age, and his son in his old age. Jun Zhantian, who was an extremely high official, had all 3 of them, but the heavens still felt that the blow was not heavy enough. The 2 grandsons he had painstakingly nurtured, where all his hopes rested, had gone to the battlefield on the eve of their wedding. They never returned, and not even their bones were left. When the news arrived, Jun Zhantian was ordering people to decorate the bridal chamber. He was waiting for his grandson to come back and get married. He was waiting to hold his great-grandson, and his heart was filled with joy and longing. When the news arrived, Jun Zhantian's hair and beard turned white overnight. The joyful laughter of the past, and the scene of a family sitting around a table, enjoying the bliss of a family reunion, was still before his eyes. But it was gone forever. In such a large family, other than himself, there was only a crippled son and a disappointing debauchee grandson. Desolation filled his eyes. Thus, Jun Zhantian became depressed. He was in despair, and there was no hope. But, amidst this hopelessness, his once incomparably disappointed grandson, Jun Moxie, appeared out of thin air. His previous debauchee appearance had been washed away, and he had become lofty and unyielding. Moreover, he had a deep and astute mind, and his thoughts were nimble. There was a faint air of astuteness and foresight. This had already greatly comforted Grandpa Jun's heart, and he felt extremely excited. Unexpectedly, an even bigger surprise had yet to come: his own son's disability, which had once rendered all the world's doctors helpless, had actually been cured by his grandson. The heavens have mercy! Jun Zhantian finally burst into tears, tears of joy. Decades of depression and worry had been swept away. The heavens have mercy, and my Jun family can also have today hope and a future. Not only does the Jun family have a successor, but the student has also surpassed the master. Even if this old man closes his eyes now, he can still smile in the underworld without any regrets. Even the ancestors of the Jun family in the underworld can calmly smile. Grandpa Jun was so excited that he could no longer speak, but his body was trembling after a long time. Chapter 106. He slowly lowered his head and looked at his strong and powerful legs. He slowly moved them a few times and even kicked them a few times. Suddenly, he burst into laughter. As he laughed, his face was filled with tears. This iron-blooded man of the past, the all-powerful general, did not shed a tear even when he was plotted against. But now that he had recovered, his eyes were streaming with tears. Through his tears, he saw his old father and his nephew standing in front of him with a smile, looking at him warmly. Jun Wui was excited. He quickly took 2 steps forward and suddenly knelt down. This unfilial child has no intention of paying respects to father. It has been 10 years since he has paid his respects to his father. Jun Zhantian's whole body trembled. His voice was trembling. My son, get up, quickly get up. Mo-sia. Jun Wui stood up and looked deeply at Jun Moxie. Third uncle's life was saved by you, boy. He hadn't even finished speaking when Jun Mo-sia interrupted him with a smile. Third uncle, you're talking like that. You're still alive and well. Besides, I'm your nephew. How can I write 2 characters with the character Jun in one stroke? We're a family, so there's no need to say thank you. You don't need to treat me as a junior. Jun Wui laughed straightforwardly and looked deeply at his nephew. At this moment, he wholeheartedly made a decision in his heart. Now that I've stood up, the Jun family's heavy burden will fall on my shoulders. I, Jun Wui, have unsheathed my sword which has been covered in dust for 10 years. Not for the country, not for the common people. Only for the Jun family. Only for Mo-sia. Third uncle. Jun Mo-sia suddenly chuckled. His chuckle was quite strange and malicious, causing the 2 of them to scratch their heads in confusion. She looked at him in confusion. Third uncle, although your capital is not small, but... Jun Moxie laughed so hard that his whole body was convulsing. Although Grandpa would definitely be very willing to see you standing so valiantly and proudly, I, your nephew, will still be shy. Shouldn't you cover yourself? Ha ha. Jun Moxie winked as he looked at Jun Wui's crotch. It turned out that ever since Jun Wui came back from the treatment, he was still completely naked. When he found out that he had fully recovered, he was so excited that he didn't even notice this. Even now, he was still standing upright, shaking his head, looking rather high-spirited. After waiting for 10 years, when would he be able to test his spear? Jun Zhantian was reminded by Jun Mo-sia's words, and then looked at his son's majestic figure. He couldn't help but blow his beard and laugh heartily. Jun Wuyi's face suddenly turned purple as he gnashed his teeth in hatred. You little bastard, just you wait for me. I'll deal with you later. With a swoosh, he disappeared, leaving the grandfather and grandson holding their stomachs and laughing heartily without a care for their image. After a while, Jun Wui, dressed in a green robe, whizzed over. He rubbed his palms and said, Kid, don't run if you have the guts. Jun Moxie was shocked and screamed, Help, I don't know how to fight. He turned around and ran. But how could his current speed compare to Jun Wui, who had just advanced to the Tianxian realm? His buttocks were being hit by Jun Wui accurately. Jun Moxie laughed as he ran and begged for mercy. Jun Wui completely ignored him and continued to beat him. Jun Moxie had no choice but to run behind Grandpa Jun. He grabbed his sleeves and dodged left and right. Jun Wui snorted angrily and chased after him. Even though Grandpa Jun had the mental fortitude of a Sky Xian level expert, he was still dizzy from being spun around by these 2 people. However, he was still able to laugh heartily. This kind of familial happiness had not appeared in this family for a very, very long time. Seeing that the 6 burly men were about to lift the big iron pot and pour it away, Jun Moxie could not care less about being beaten. He hurriedly shouted, Stop! This is a good thing, it can't be poured away. When he said that, Jun Wui and Jun Zhantian were surprised. Jun Wui had beaten his nephew until the whole family was beaming with joy. The embarrassment had long disappeared, and they stood at the side with a smile. This is such a useful thing, how can it be poured away so casually? It is very useful. Jun Moxie drove the burly men away from the iron pot and turned around. He picked up a leather bag from the side and poured a lot of things into the big iron pot. It was as if a ladle of cold water had been poured into boiling oil. Crackling sounds could be heard. After Jun Moxie finished pouring, he quickly retreated. When the black water from the pot fell onto the ground, it immediately turned black. Jun Wui and Grandpa Jun were dumbfounded. This kind of poison is too vicious. What did you pour into the pot? Why is it so overbearing? Grandpa June was not ashamed to ask. Grandpa June could see that there was something strange about this grandson of his. He could not use common sense to speculate on him. It is actually snake venom, just that there are slightly more types, June Moxie said with a smile. There are a total of 13 types of snake venom here. As he said that, June Moxie pointed at the big iron pot. Grandfather, third uncle, look. Third uncle's bathwater is a combination of 6 types of poison. However, due to the mutual enhancement and restraint between them, they are able to coexist peacefully. But after the addition of the snake venom, this big pot of water becomes the most poisonous thing in the world. We only need to mix them evenly, dilute them with water and place them in a wooden bucket. Then, we insert the weapons of our family warriors into the water and soak it for a period of time. That will immediately turn it into a poisonous weapon. When the war is over, too vicious, too despicable, too shameless. If such a weapon were to stab into the body of an enemy, there is no need to stab a vital point. Just a little scratch on the hands or feet would be enough to be fatal. Such a poisonous thing, even with Grandpa June's cultivation, Tian Xian, he might not be able to withstand it for long. Truly terrifying. It was exceptionally frightening. June Zhan Tian and June Wui stretched their necks further and further as their eyes widened. At this moment, they looked at June Moxie as if they were looking at a demon that had escaped from hell. Both of them shuddered at the same time. Compared to the harmonious and joyous atmosphere of the June family, the Grand Preceptor's mansion was in a gloomy and miserable state. Although Li Zhen and Meng Haizhou were driven out of the magnificent jewel hall on the spot and the Li family was deprived of the right to enter the magnificent jewel hall, but as long as the Meng family's box was still there was no problem at all. Moreover, the most important thing was that the jade coral that had been successfully traded was finally brought back to the magnificent jewel hall in one piece. Just based on this point alone, it was a great achievement and at least the merits outweighed the demerits. After Li Yuran saw the jade coral, she listened to Li Zhen's frightening report with a smile on her face. Li Zhen anxiously thought that Li Yuran would fly into a rage and punish him, but he did not expect that Li Yuran would lightly say, "Oh, 5 million taels? Not expensive at all." No matter how you look at it, the Tang family also participated in the competition. For you to be able to buy the jade coral is already very good. Little brother Zhen, later you can go to Manager Li in the accounts room and collect the 3 million taels that you paid in advance. Regarding the Li family's right to enter the magnificent jewel hall, such a great shame and humiliation, Li Yuran did not even mention it. It was really puzzling. This sentence made Li Zhen and Meng Haizhou almost unable to believe their ears. They almost thought that the person standing in front of them was not Li Yuran, but rather someone else. Since when did young Master Yuran become so easy to talk to? The two of them stared blankly for a long time, as if they had just awoken from a dream. Although they were puzzled, at the moment everything was fine. They could not help but let out a big sigh of relief and thanked her profusely. Li Yuran sat quietly and smiled as she looked at the sparkling and translucent jade coral in front of her. After a long time, she let out a sigh and said to herself, "I was really careless. I did not take into account that old Master Tang also needed this thing. If I had missed this opportunity, it would have been my fault. However, with such a price, if it was not for these two debauches, I am afraid that, if it was someone else, they would have given up in fear. This is perhaps the only advantage of being a debauchee. As the saying goes, a ruler is short, an inch is short. A person should make the best use of everything. This is probably what it means." Speaking up to here, she chuckled twice. Her palms stealthily circulated her xian qi and her whole body flashed with a golden light. She then withdrew her hands and said with a happy face, "The rumors are indeed true. This thing contains a very large amount of heaven and earth energy. If grandfather absorbs this energy, even if he cannot practice xianqi again, it would be more than enough to prolong his life. She gracefully stood up and picked up the jade coral before walking towards the Grand Preceptor Li Shang's study room. In the study room, Grand Preceptor Li narrowed his eyes as he looked at the jade coral in front of him. His face revealed a happy smile. Firstly, it was for the sake of his own health. Secondly, it was for the sake of his grandson's filial piety. Grand Preceptor Li suddenly felt that with a grandson like this, what more could he ask for? Grandfather, this matter should not be delayed. If others were to find out about it, it might be a long night and many dreams. Why don't we use the method that my master once told us? I will activate the energy and grandfather will absorb this good thing as soon as possible. Li Yuran smiled warmly and elegantly. Li Shang chuckled and said thoughtfully, "That's good too. Go and call them out. They will protect us, grandfather and grandson." Li Yuran hummed and clapped her hands twice. In an instant, there was a rustling sound from outside. A person said respectfully, "Master, young master, we have already tightly controlled the area of 30 feet around the study room. Do we need to increase it?" Li Yuran said gently, "Enough." The person outside responded and did not make another sound. Li Shang looked at his grandson with a gratified expression and asked, "Have your martial brothers returned?" Li Yuran said, "Yes, they have already returned to the mountain. Their journey was safe and there were no accidents. I will definitely pass on grandfather's concern." Li Shang coughed twice and said with a smile, "We are grandfather and grandson. Why are we talking about this? It's a pity that your master cannot come down personally. If he could come, our Li family would have the greatest guarantee." Sigh. He let out a long sigh. "Master is preparing for the appointment at Heaven's equal peak in 3 years. I am afraid that he cannot be distracted for the time being. But with the help of my martial brothers, I believe that it will be more than enough to deal with these matters in Tianxiang Kingdom. As long as it is not an army expedition, we do not have to worry about anything." Li Shang nodded noncommittally. He let out a deep breath and said excitedly, "Since this matter should not be delayed, let us begin now." Chapter 107. Yes. Li Yuran replied and gently placed the jade coral on the table in front of Li Shang. Then, she firmly pressed one side of the jade coral, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her whole body shone with a golden light. It was obvious that she was operating the Xian Qi with all her might. The jade coral made a clanging sound. It was originally sparkling and translucent like jade, but now there was a faint light seemingly leaping out from the jade coral. Strands of blue qi, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, slowly rose from the surface. The moment the blue qi rose, the entire body of the jade coral turned into a strange blue color. The time has come. Li Shang's eyes flashed with a trace of desire. He calmed his mind and slowly stretched out his skinny right palm, gently caressing the other side of the jade coral. The moment his palm touched the jade coral, the minute qi that was stirred up by Li Yuran, at a speed visible to the naked eye, scrambled along Li Shang's arm and slowly penetrated into his body, bit by bit. As the blue qi entered his body, Grand Preceptor Li Shang's originally emotionless face could not help but reveal a trace of heartfelt joy. He could clearly feel that his meridians were feeling much better at this moment. As the blue qi continued to enter, Li Shang felt his body becoming more and more relaxed, and even his soul was trembling with joy. His dantian, the place where Jun Zhan Tian punched it, had long since lost all feeling. Now there was a faint pain, which was then gently soothed by the blue qi. His dantian and meridians, which had been damaged for many years, were also recovering at an extremely slow speed. Both of them closed their eyes and clearly felt the changes. Both of them were filled with joy. The two of them did not notice that the jade sea coral had suddenly changed its color. In an instant it had become pure white. under the cover of the faint blue gas, there was a ball of white spiritual energy violently rushing left and right. The blue gas had originally tightly wrapped around it, leaving not a single drop. Although the white gas was violent and agile, it could not rush out. But with Li Yuan's urging and Li Shang's absorption, the density of the blue qi became thinner and thinner, and the white qi became thicker and thicker. Gradually, the white qi began to overpower the host. There was only one last step before his dantian could recover. The old scars of decades had haunted Grand Preceptor Li for half his life. Now that they had recovered, how could he not be excited? Not ecstatic? Even though Grand Preceptor Li was used to seeing great winds and waves, he still felt that his mental state was a little unstable at this moment. Li Shang was overjoyed and said in a trembling voice, "Yuan, my dantian should recover soon." Li Yuan was ecstatic as she said, "Grandfather, the shackles that Jun Zhan Tian had placed on you can be removed from now on. My Li family will also never fall." Ha ha! Both grandfather and grandson smiled sincerely at the same time. Their smiles were filled with hope and longing all of a sudden. Amidst this joy, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. At the most critical moment when Grand Preceptor Li's dantian was about to recover, the completely different heaven and earth spiritual qi that Jun Moxie had injected earlier suddenly broke free from the shackles of the blue qi. Like an evil dragon that had suddenly broken free from its shackles, it followed the direction of the blue qi at lightning speed and charged forward with irresistible force. A wisp of abnormally violent and swift air current, with a so sound, escaped into Li Shang's recovering meridians like a ghost. Then, it barged its way into his dantian, which was about to fully recover, like a hot knife through butter. Caught off guard, Li Shang only felt a loud bang coming from his dantian. His face immediately turned deathly pale. The dantian that had almost fully recovered suddenly collapsed once again. It was as if a complete disc had been broken from his dantian. The cracks were like crisscrossing tree roots, rapidly spreading towards the surrounding meridians. Li Shang spat out a mouthful of blood with a qi sound. He lost all his senses and his body fell limply to the sky. "Grandpa!" Li Yuan cried out in shock. Her mind was in a mess. At the same time that Li Shang fell, the piece of jade coral exploded without any warning under the extreme entanglement of the two spiritual qi. Li Yuan, who was close by and worried about her grandfather, hurriedly stretched out her head to check. Immediately, her head and face were smashed by the fragments. She screamed. Her head and face were covered in blood. "What's going on? Why is this happening? Who can tell me what's going on?" Li Yuan could no longer maintain her poise. She looked up to the sky and screamed. At this moment, Li Yuan, who was usually as calm as Mount Tai, had a face full of panic, helplessness, worry, malevolence, and blood. She looked like an evil spirit. Jade coral. The jade coral was obviously useful. Why did it suddenly explode? Master promised it before. Li Yuan did not care about the wounds on her face. She tore at her hair as if she had gone crazy. To be honest, even Jun Moxie himself did not know about the changes that had happened here. Jun Dashao would never have thought that the qi that he had inadvertently injected into the jade coral would achieve such a glorious result. Dashao's original intention was only to cause some damage. He could not stand Li Jin's face. At most, he hoped that the spiritual qi would be able to destroy the jade coral. But Jun Moxie would never have thought that the moment his spiritual qi merged with the yuan qi of this world, its power would be no less than a landmine. This explosion had completely cut off Grand Tutor Li's hope of recovering his xian qi. The current Grand Tutor Li would not be able to recover his dantian even if a deity descended to the mortal world. Not only that, Li Shang's already weak body became even worse after this unforeseen event, and he almost lost his life. It was really a case of intentionally planting flowers but not intentionally planting willows and growing shade. A small capital and huge profits. Apart from a small capital and huge profits, there seemed to be a lot of side effect. Li Yuran's once handsome face had more or less been left with 7 or 8 scars. But these 7 or 8 scars were equivalent to disfigurement. If Li Yuran hadn't instinctively closed his eyes, perhaps he would have become a blind man by now. But even so, Li Yuran would continue to wear a veil for a long time to come. It was like looking at flowers through a fog. This explosion was really a little unexpected. Some families were happy while others were sad. Compared to the Jun family's excitement, and the Li family's fear and misery, the Dugu family's mood was like that of a burning volcano. Ever since Princess Raimu had paid a visit and left with Dugu Xiaoyi under the arrangements of the old lady of the Dugu family was like a huge barrel of gunpowder that had suddenly exploded. Dugu Zongheng pointed at Dugu Wudi's face and cursed him for a good 2 hours. Occasionally, he would punch and kick him in anger. Dugu Wudi grimaced in pain and became a yes-man. He did not dare to resist. In fact, he was no less depressed than his father. "Are you a pig? You useless son of AB*tch. I told you to look at your daughter. Is this how you look? You bastard! You are a pig!" Dugu Zongheng was furious. "Even if you like a pig, it's still better than Jun Moxie. Damn it! That's Jun Moxie. Are you blind? F*ck, that's Jun Moxie we're talking about. Are you F*king blind?" Dugu Wudi's face was full of spittle, but he didn't dare to wipe it off. He stammered with difficulty, I don't know. If I had known." This sentence brought about a new round of storm. "Bah, if you don't know, who would know? What else do you know? You're her father." Dugu Zongheng was about to go crazy with anger. That Jun Moxie is famous for being a debauchee in the capital. Good people stay away from him, and bad people stay away from him. Which daughter of a good family would want to marry him? Not to mention our Xiaoyi. Is your brain stuffed with tofu dregs, or is it filled with water? How about getting kicked by a donkey? What a bastard! What an idiot! Idiot! How did I raise you in the first place? My wisdom has been wasted on a pig like you." Dugu Wudi passively endured the rain of spittle. He felt that he couldn't open his eyes. "Father, please calm down. Xiaoyi's absent-minded state has only just begun. It seems that there hasn't been any substantial progress between the two of them. There's still time." Dugu Wudi's words had thoroughly poked the hornet's nest. Dugu Zongheng flew into a rage. He raised his leg, and Dugu Wudi's tall and sturdy body was sent flying like a rubber ball. He stamped his feet and cursed, "You! Are you even talking like a human? What do you mean by there hasn't been substantial progress? Don't tell me that you want to make substantial progress? It's not too late? Do you want to wait until your daughter is pregnant before it's too late? Do you think that Jun Moxie, that son of a bitch, wouldn't do such a thing?" The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Dugu Zongheng grabbed his son and started to madly beat him. Usually, Madame Dowager would have come out to mediate at such a time. However, this time, she just stood at the side and did not move at all. At this moment, she actually fanned the flames and added, "You deserve to be beaten. How did this old lady give birth to such a blind son?" Dugu Zongheng's anger subsided a little after he had madly beaten his son. His face turned black as he said, "This matter must stop. You take advantage of the time that Xiaoyi is accompanying the princess in the palace. Quickly resolve this matter for me. This old man will kick you until you explode if I hear any similar news again. Why are you still not going? Why do you want this old man to go personally?" Great General Dugu Wudi crawled up from the ground with a bloody nose and swollen face, and fled in panic. Dugu Wudi returned to his courtyard after he had eaten the old man's first meal. He was immediately thrown into chaos. First, he vented his anger at his wives. Then, he passed down an order. Dugu Ing, Dugu Xiong, Dugu Hao, Dugu Jie, Dugu Cheng, Dugu Shang, and Dugu Qian are to immediately return from the barracks outside the city. No mistakes are allowed. Military law, family law will be meted out for any delay. Great General Dugu had decided to start with June Moxie. That repulsive brat dared to seduce my daughter, and caused me to be taught a lesson by my father. Isn't he tired of living? Do you think that I won't dare to touch you because your grandfather is protecting you? Just because I got beaten up today, I'll peel off 3 layers of your skin. Not to mention that you've even provoked my precious Xiao Yi. Humph. Chapter 108. The 7 names mentioned by Dugu Wudi were the next generation of the Dugu family. The names were given by Dugu Zongheng. The last character of the 7 names added up to heroes and legends rush forward. It was a very imposing name. Dugu Zongheng had originally planned to use this as the first half of the couplet. He had also prepared a second half: dragons, tigers, leopards, wolves fill the sky. He had been waiting for his 3 sons to make a second half of the couplet. But he had not expected that after these 7 sons, the family's baby would come out, Dugu Xiaoyi. Just as Dugu Zongheng was looking forward to it, there was no more news. This made Dugu Zongheng extremely depressed. He could only swallow the second half of the dragons, tigers, leopards, wolves fill the sky couplet. As for the wind and cloud general couplet, there was no need to mention it. A good couplet was useless. Naturally, Dugu Zongheng had been greatly disappointed in this matter. He had scolded his 3 sons for being good-for-nothings, and for not living up to his expectations. Naturally, although Dugu Zongheng was rude and unreasonable, he knew that his daughter-in-law was not someone he could casually scold. Therefore, he only scolded his sons. Of the 3 sons, only the eldest, Dugu Wudi, was in the capital. His other 2 sons, Dugu Wushang and Dugu Wudong, were guarding the east and south sides of the empire. They refused to come back no matter what. Actually, they had been beaten up by the old master, and there were repercussions from it. The generals of the empire had to have some dignity. With the title of guarding the border, they naturally didn't want to come back if they could. It wasn't that Dugu Wudi didn't want to go out and hide from the old man at home. Unfortunately, his 2 younger brothers were outside, and he really couldn't go out. Other than coming back every year for the old master and old lady's birthday, even if the old master asked him to, he would just pretend to be deaf and mute. And the 2 times they came back every year, Dugu Wudi and his son would not even be able to sober up before the 2 brothers had already slipped away. The other 2 sides of the Tianxiang Empire were guarded by Grandpa Jun's men. They had nothing to do with the Dugu family. Dugu Wudi felt very wronged. I am the eldest brother. Why should I have such a hard life? How long would he have to endure the days of being scolded every 3 days and beaten up every half a month? At the end of the day, I'm a general in my 40s with a son and a daughter. Just as the Li family was in a gloomy mood and the Dugu family was furious, June Moxie, the instigator of one of the families and the main culprit of the other family, was drinking merrily with his grandfather. Jun Wui was dressed in a green robe. His Adam's apple kept moving up and down as he swallowed his saliva. This was according to Jun Dashao's doctor's advice. Jun Wui had just recovered from his injury, so he shouldn't drink alcohol for the time being. However, this grandfather and grandson pair were smacking their lips as if they were extremely satisfied. When he smelled the fragrance of the wine, Jun Wui almost couldn't hold it in anymore. Monsieur, I'm very curious about your martial arts and your strange heart sutra. Jun Zhan Tian tossed out a question as he drank his wine with relish. Even Jun Wui opened his eyes wide and pricked up his ears when he heard this sentence. This was because Jun Moxie's martial arts were too unimaginable. Both of them were very knowledgeable, but they had never seen or heard of any Xian Qi that could have such an effect. Not only could it heal injuries, it could also repel poison. Moreover, it didn't emit any light. Moreover, its power was incomparably great. Such a miraculous skill should be very famous in the Xian continent, but there had never been any news of it. This was too strange. Jun Moxie was silent for a while. After a long time, he said, "Grandfather, third uncle, can you not ask about this? I really don't want to lie to you." "Oh, this old man understands," Jun Tian suddenly realized. "The expert who taught you martial arts didn't want you to say it, right? Haha, many people have this kind of strange temperament. Besides, if this kind of miraculous martial arts were to spread, it would only bring you harm. The fewer people who know about it, the better. Haha, this old man won't ask. And I won't ask. Moxie has this kind of miraculous martial arts. Not only can we not ask, but we must also keep it a secret." Jun Wui nodded. "Otherwise, who wouldn't covet this kind of miraculous martial arts? The consequences would be unimaginable if even a little bit of news were to leak out." "That's right. No matter what, Moxie is a descendant of our Jun family. This alone is enough." Jun Tian laughed heartily. He was very gratified. The way he looked at Jun Moxie became even more affectionate. Jun Moxie stared blankly. He didn't expect that before he could make up a reason, these two had already made up a perfect reason for him. "Moxie, your third uncle has also recovered. What are your plans? Tell me." Jun Tian was in a good mood. The more he looked at his grandson, the more satisfied he became. He stroked his beard and asked, "Plans? What plans can I have? Once third uncle recovers, won't I be free? I'll continue to be a debauchee, how good is that?" Jun Moxie drank a mouthful of wine and continued to work on the wild boar meat on the table. His hands were greasy. "Everything else will naturally be arranged by you, grandfather. However, there is one thing. The news of third uncle's recovery cannot be spread out in a short period of time. Especially now that he has advanced to heaven's stage, it cannot be spread out. On this point, grandfather, it's up to you. You can continue to wander around with a sad face." At the mention of this matter, Jun Tian frowned. He felt a little annoyed. He scolded, "Nonsense, this old man used to worry because of you two brats. Now that you, Moxie, have worked hard and Wu Yi has also recovered, what else do I have to worry about? All the worries of the past are gone. How can I continue to pretend?" He said with a long sigh. It was not that he could not pretend, but Jun Tian was really tired of those days of frowning. In the past he had to worry, but now he had to say that he was worried. How could he not be depressed? "Then what should I do?" Jun Moxie spread out his greasy hands. "You just don't want to worry? That's easy to do. I'll go out and create some trouble for you. Making you frown all the time? For example, I'll smash the magnificent jewel hall, catch the 3 princes and beat them up, or kidnap a few women. You're looking for a beating." Jun Tian knew that he was joking, but he was still angry. "That day, I still haven't settled the accounts with you about the magnificent jewel hall, and you actually brought it up yourself. Let me tell you, some things are really above the state apparatus. For example, the magnificent jewel hall. No matter what, you cannot provoke the magnificent jewel hall. Even if you reach the peak of Great Master Shen Xian, the magnificent jewel hall is not something you can afford to provoke. Do you understand?" Jun Tian's voice was very solemn, and the wording was quite harsh. "What is the origin of the magnificent jewel hall?" Jun Moxie's curiosity grew even stronger. "Even the peak of Great Master Shen Xian cannot provoke them? They are above the state apparatus? I can only tell you that the magnificent jewel hall is only the tip of the iceberg. But even so, it is enough to deter the world. There are also several great Master Shen Xian masters. As for the deeper things, this old man is not very clear. I only know that you must not provoke them." Jun Tian sighed and looked at Jun Wui with some regret. Jun Wui's face twitched, and his eyes revealed a touch of pain. It was as if his whole soul was being stabbed at this moment. But in the blink of an eye, he calmed down. He sat calmly, but was much quieter than before. In that case, from now on, all the secret forces of the family will be handed over to Wu Yi. As for Emosie, Jun Jean Tian pondered for a long time, but could not make up his mind. Finally, he gave up and said, "You do what you need to do. When you have free time, help your third uncle." Jun Wui and Jun Moxie nodded. Jun Moxie reminded, "Grandfather, third uncle, before third uncle takes over the family's power, we must first completely clean up the spies in the family." Jun Emosia paused for a moment and then stared at the two men. Third uncle's recovery is obviously a great thing for our Jun family. But it's an additional variable for outsiders, and it'll increase the threat. Especially. Jun Emosia smiled faintly as he pointed his finger upwards. His meaning was self-evident. The secret forces of the Jun family, grandfather, may have been thoroughly cleaned up. There are no people from the other families. I can believe this. But there must still be people from the imperial family in the family. And grandfather, you also know about these people, right? I'm just turning a blind eye. Jun Moxie smiled. But now it is a critical moment. So we must cut them off. Jun Jean Tian looked at his grandson in shock. Every word that Jun Emosia had said was the truth. He had guessed correctly. After a long while Jun Jean Tian bitterly twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "That's right, there are indeed people sent by the emperor. And they have been around for more than 10 years. Even for the Jun family, they have not done anything wrong. That is because the Jun family has never done anything to threaten the imperial family. Moreover, we have always been loyal to the imperial family. Of course, they do not need to report. But now it is different. Although we are not disloyal, but once the news of us gets out, just suspicion will be enough to exterminate our family." Jun Moxie's eyes shone as he said word by word, "Now, even if they have betrayed the imperial family and become part of the Jun family, we cannot take this risk. Now is not the time to be soft-hearted. If we do not act decisively, we will only suffer." Jun Jean Tian sighed. The wrinkles on his old face seemed to have deepened. After a long time he said, "You are right. I will give a list of names to the two of you. As for what to do, I will leave it to the two of you to decide. There is no need to inform me." He stood up and left with heavy step. "Emosia, isn't this a little too cruel? Your grandfather cannot bear to do this. Can we?" Jun Wui frowned. A look of struggle appeared on his face. Jun Wui wouldn't have hesitated to attack an enemy. But he couldn't bear to attack a man who had made countless contributions to the Jun family. Even if they knew that they were spies sent by the imperial family to spy on the Jun family, but they had still made great contributions to the Jun family. Chapter 109. I don't want to do that either. These people are your and grandfather's old subordinates, and even comrades who have gone through life and death together. But we can't put the entire Jun family's survival on a glimmer of hope. If we don't do this now, we will have to bear this cruelty in the future. Third uncle, they are not alone. Will they all betray the royal family and join the Jun family? This is simply impossible. Once our concealment is exposed, it will arouse the royal family's suspicions. The hundreds of people in the Jun family, the thousands of people in the Jun family's fiefdom, and even the military generals who are attached to the Jun family will all be implicated. That is the lives of tens of thousands of people. I think third uncle should know better than I do. Third uncle told me about the helplessness of the aristocratic family's disciples the day before yesterday. How come you're so sentimental when it comes to yourself? Third uncle, you're about to take over the responsibility of the Jun family's life and death. Don't tell me you're going to shrink back? Jun Emosia calmly analyzed the situation. There was a hint of cruelty in his expression, and his tone of voice was somewhat sinister. If this goes on, do we have to hide it until we die? Jun Wui frowned. Third uncle, isn't your vision a little too limited? Look at the magnificent jewel hall now, Jun Moxie laughed and leisurely said. Looking at the whole world, which emperor would dare to touch the magnificent jewel hall? Jun Wui was aghast. It turned out that his nephew's ambition was actually so great. But the magnificent jewel hall is the result of countless generations of hard work and our Jun family. Jun Wui frowned deeply. The Jun family has me. And you. And grandfather. Jun Moxie snorted and gently swirled the wine glass in his hand. The three of us are enough. Our Jun family will be stronger than the magnificent jewel hall. Jun Moxie's calm face revealed an unparalleled confidence. Jun Wui looked at his nephew in a daze, and his heart suddenly welled up with a feeling of heroism that he hadn't felt for a long time. He almost blindly chose to believe his nephew's words, because if that was the case, then his own would really have hope. Third uncle, your old injuries have just healed and the poison has just been removed. During this period of time, you must focus on recuperating and not rashly use your Xian Qi. Although you have now entered the Tian Xian realm, but most of it comes from the blazing heart meridian and not from your own bitter cultivation, so your foundation is quite unstable. I have already instructed the kitchen to specially prepare a medicinal diet for you, third uncle. During this period of time, for at least 10 days, your Xian Qi can only be nourished in your Dantian to ensure that all of your Xian Qi and Zhen Yuan are under your control. At the very least, you must reach the point where you can freely withdraw your Xian Qi. During this period, you must absolutely not act rashly. You must also refrain from joy and anger. If you have nothing to do, just use your pure physical strength to move a little. This is something that third uncle should understand. Jun Moxie looked at Jun Wui meaningfully. I believe that after 10 days, third uncle will definitely find out what kind of surprise his current body can give you. I understand. 10 years have passed, a mere 10 days is nothing. Jun Wui nodded heavily. The 300 people who trained previously have not returned yet? Jun Moxie casually spun his wine glass. After the 300 guards had trained to a certain degree, Jun Moxie began to arrange the death training. These 300 people would go to the Tian Fa forest to hunt low-level Xian beasts, Xian Dan and fur. Moreover, there was a strict rule that they had to hunt at least 10 or more 5th-rank Xian beasts. The higher the rank, the better. As for the low-level ones, the more the better. If they did not complete the mission, they were not allowed to return. Before leaving, Jun Moxie said with a murderous aura, this time in the Tian Fa forest, everything is up to you, including your own lives. The death rate is estimated to be more than half. This is the beginning of the road to the strong, and also the beginning of the first round of eliminations. There is only one consequence for being eliminated, and that is to step on the road to the Yellow Springs. In addition, this was also a way for Jun Moxie to find spies within the group. After the group entered the Tian Fa forest, Grandpa Jun's army would guard the way back. Anyone who returned without permission would be killed without mercy. Any birds that flew out from the Tian Fa forest would be shot dead. Then, they would silently kill the person who sent the message. These were all carried out by Grandpa Jun's secret bodyguard. Every one of them was a jade-level Xian Qi expert. Naturally, there was no suspense in the outcome. Since the start of the mission, there have been 27 people who revealed their traces. Or perhaps they were unable to catch up. All of them have been confirmed dead. As of now, there are no more messages being sent out. Jun Wui's expression was one of exhaustion. I didn't think that there would be so many people hidden amongst the ordinary soldiers of my Jun family. Do they really think that my Jun family is easy to bully? Jun Moxie lowered his head and calculated for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, no messages have been sent out for such a long time. That means that they are almost completely wiped out. As for the remaining people, I can finally be at ease. As long as they can return, They are worth nurturing. Jun Wui nodded slightly and stood up. He reluctantly looked at the wine cup in Jun Moxie's hand and returned to his own courtyard. Jun Moxie sat quietly for a moment. Then, he silently laughed and stood up. He walked towards his own courtyard. The second batch of wine should be coming out soon. This batch was the real deal. Suddenly, the capital seemed to be in a state of chaos for a moment before everything calmed down. A horse galloped to the front door of the Jun residence. It was a servant of the imperial palace. Grandpa Jun hurriedly went out and headed towards the imperial palace. At the same time, the imperial physician of the imperial palace rushed to the Li residence. The Dugu family's father and son also left everything behind and hurriedly rode towards the imperial palace. In addition, the leaders of the various families and the higher-ranked officials also gathered in the direction of the imperial palace. To outsiders, this was undoubtedly a major event. A major event that could shake the entire Tianxiang kingdom. In fact, it was indeed a major event. The imperial tutor, the minister of the imperial palace, Li Shang, suddenly fell ill and fell into a coma. His life was at stake. Imperial tutor Li was the head of the civil officials in Tianxiang kingdom. How could the imperial palace not be in chaos when he suddenly collapsed without any warning? His Majesty the Emperor was furious. He sat on the dragon throne and slammed the table. A good civil official went to cultivate Xianqi. Now, not only did he fail to cultivate Xianqi, he was tormented to the point where his life was on its last breath. He had been in control of the imperial palace for so long. Now that he has collapsed, the entire imperial palace is paralyzed. How can I not be distressed by such a situation? Yu. At this point, His Majesty the Emperor suddenly stopped talking. He rubbed his forehead and sighed weakly. Because when he looked down, His Majesty the Emperor realized that he had done something stupid. A super stupid thing. The people below, Grandpa Jun was frowning. His eyes were staring blankly at the empty space in front of him. His soul seemed to have left his body. It was obvious that he had not heard a single word. Dugu Zongheng tilted his head and used his carrot-sized finger to pick his nose. From time to time, he would flick his nose. What kind of attitude is this? Tang Wanli frowned and looked at Dugu Zongheng. From time to time, his lips would squirm as he cursed in his heart. Occasionally, he would hastily dodge the flick of his nose. Old Master Tang may be arrogant towards the Meng family and the Li family, but he did not dare to say anything in front of this big brother. Even if he wanted to curse, he only dared to curse in his heart. The Meng family's old man stood solemnly. His eyes were on his nose, and his nose was on his heart. The Murong family's old man, Murong Fengyun, was leaning against a pillar in the main hall. His white beard had a sparkling thing on it. It seemed to have come from his mouth. The Song family's old man lowered his head. It seemed as if he was testing whether his head could be inserted into his crotch. His Majesty the Emperor suddenly came to his senses. He wanted to slap himself. If you're angry, just vent it on the court officials. Why did you have to vent it on these old things? What's the difference between playing the lute to a cow? What's the use of it? Finally, he impatiently waved his hand. Go, go, go. It's all my fault. I was wrong. Why bother you old immortals? Go, 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 go back to sleep. Don't tire yourselves out. The old men seemed to have awoken from a dream. One by one, they apologized and thanked the emperor. Dugu Zongheng took a few steps before he suddenly turned back and kicked Murong Fengyun. Wake up. Don't sleep anymore. Go home and sleep. Murong Fengyun groaned and stood up with sleepy eyes. He looked helpless. Your Majesty, this old subject is guilty. This old subject is selling rice cakes, old and old. I actually fell asleep in your Majesty's golden hall. This, all of you get lost. Go back home and sell rice cakes. His Majesty the Emperor's roar scared the officials who were waiting for the Emperor in the side hall. They trembled. The few old masters looked like they were in a sorry state, and they were scared witless. As soon as they got out of the palace gate, they looked at each other, laughed evilly, and parted ways, swaggering away. The emperor's thunderous roar could already be heard from the palace. Old bastard June! Stop right there! June Jean Tian had only taken a few steps when he heard someone calling him from behind. He turned around and saw Duguzong Heng rushing over with a black face. Are you looking for a beating? June Jean Tian frowned. You've become bolder today? You dare to shout at this old man? You're rebelling, you old monkey! Fu *k. Who do you think you are? When did this old man give a damn about you? Duguzong Heng snorted and said, This old man will help you teach that grandson of yours a lesson. I'll peel off 2 layers of his skin. Do you have any objections? What? What did you say? June Jean Tian turned around and was about to leave. But, he suddenly turned around. His eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning. You want to teach my grandson a lesson? As he said this, the blue light on his body suddenly soared, and a tyrannical aura filled the air. The cloak embroidered with blood orchids on his body fluttered without any wind, making a sound. The old man was clearly enraged. There weren't many people in the capital who would have the guts to openly make a move against Jun Mo Xie under such circumstances. However, there were a few people from the Dugu family who didn't fall into this category. For example, Dugu Wu Di, Dugu Xiao Yi, and Dugu Zong Heng. And Dugu Zong Heng was someone who would do what he said. Chapter 110. Dugu Zong Heng suddenly felt suffocated, even the air around him seemed to have stopped flowing. June Jean Tian was giving him a huge amount of pressure at this moment. He had never imagined that June Jean Tian would make such a face for a useless grandson. He couldn't help but snort in anger. Glaring at June Jean Tian, his aura burst out and resisted June Jean Tian's aura, not yielding an inch. You actually treat a piece of trash like a treasure? Damn it! Even if I teach him a lesson, it would still be the good fortune of your grandson's 8 lifetimes. June Jean Tian looked at him coldly. Dugu Zong Heng, how did my grandson offend you? Why did you have to personally deal with him? Give me a straightforward answer. Dugu Zong Heng snorted, his leopard eyes wide open. If he only offended me, what's the problem? This old man is a magnanimous person and would at most treat him like a fart and let him go. But your grandson should never have dared to provoke my family's Xiao Yi. Let me tell you, June Jean Tian, nothing has happened yet. If something had happened, I'm afraid you wouldn't even be able to see your grandson's corpse. If Mo Xie loses even a single hair, Dugu Zong Heng, I guarantee that the Dugu family will regret it for the rest of their lives. June Jean Tian looked at him for a long time before slowly opening his mouth. If anything happens to my Xiao Yi, June Jean Tian, I guarantee that your June family will regret it more than my Dugu family. Dugu Zong Heng looked at June Jean Tian without backing down. Lengling said. The 2 military bigwigs stood outside the imperial city like fighting cock. Their 4 eyes were wide open and it looked like they were about to fight. The bodyguards of both families were sweating profusely as they paced around in circles, but there was nothing they could do. If these 2 were to really fight, even the emperor might not give them face. At this time, I was wondering why there was something wrong here. Turns out that you 2 old things were just joking around. Grandfather Tang Wanli's voice was very cheerful. I say, old June, old Dugu, aren't you 2 ashamed? If the 2 of them added up, it would be at least 156, right? Look at all of you who are about to enter the coffin. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the younger generation? Old Master Tang put on an air of virtue and prestige. Compared to me, the 2 of you are really lacking in poise. The 2 people who were confronting each other spat at the same time, and the clouds and mist in the sky instantly dissipated. June Jean Tian coldly snorted. He looked at Tang Wanli and Dugu Zong Heng with an expressionless face. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked away. It's too late for you to go back now. Dugu Zongheng snorted twice. My family's 7 brats have already gone to the June family. Old June, you should buy some medicine to treat your grandson's injuries. Dugu Zongheng laughed heartily. But he was actually quite regretful in his heart. Who would have thought that June Zhantian would think so highly of his grandson? Not only was he a debauchee, but he had also turned into a good-for-nothing. What would he do if his 7 boys didn't know how to control their strength and beat them up? Those 7 boys had always regarded their little sister, Dugu Xiaoyi, as a treasure. So, when they heard about this matter, they all screamed and swarmed out like a swarm of bees. Then, he received the news that Li Shang had met with an accident and had gone to the imperial palace. Although he had ordered to capture June Moxie before he left, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to relax until he was captured. June Zhantian's body paused for a moment. Then, he suddenly jumped up. He didn't even mount his horse. Instead, he directly circulated his xianqi. A blue light burst out, and he disappeared with a schwa sound. Only a roar was left in the air. Dugu Zongheng, I'm not done with you. It's too late for regrets. Grandpa June was really angry. He had always called himself I. But now, he had unexpectedly burst out with vulgarities and called himself I. Old Dugu, how did you provoke Grandpa June? Is there a need to make it so tense? Grandfather Tang Wanli asked curiously as he watched from the side, his head full of confusion. Dugu Zongheng's belly was full of anger. He rolled his eyes and scolded, Go do what you need to do. It's none of your business. With a whoosh, he jumped onto his horse and galloped away. These words made Tang Wanli so angry that he almost couldn't breathe. After a long time, he heavily exhaled. He was so angry that his fingers were trembling. Old man. If it weren't for me, you two would have already started fighting. I tried to mediate with good intentions, but you actually angered me to death. Old Master Tang's white beard trembled as he thought about how ungrateful these 2 people were. His old face looked as if it had been injected with duck blood. If I encounter such a thing again in the future, I won't be a human if I stick my head out again. Suddenly, he gathered his chi and roared, This old man is the son of a tortoise, a bastard. His voice was like thunder and spread far away. The old men of the big families who had not gone far staggered at the same time. That sounds like that old bastard Tang Wanli's voice. What's wrong with him? Why is he so crazy? He actually announced to the world that he's the son of a tortoise, a bastard? Did he get kicked in the head by a donkey? It would be a pity if they didn't go and take a look at such a big piece of gossip. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After a discussion, the old men excitedly rushed towards the Tang family. Each of them was faster than the other, fighting to be the first. The lethargic atmosphere in the court had long disappeared without a trace. Even if there were a few more strong young men, they would still not be able to compete with them. If His Majesty the Emperor saw this scene, he would probably vomit blood in anger. June family unaware of the impending disaster, June Moxie directed a few strong middle-aged female servants to carry a few huge water jars. They were taking out the bright, pinkish-yellow wine from the distilling boiler that he had made himself. Seeing the water jars slowly fill up one by one, June Moxie rubbed his nose and sniffed the air. The air was filled to the brim with the fragrance of the wine. It could also be said to be the smell of distiller's grains. His heart was blooming with joy. June Moxie had never liked to drink hard liquor. Today, he made these jars with the intention of exchanging them for a large sum of money. With his current understanding of the world's wine culture, he believed that his vision of 10,000 taels of silver for a small jar would soon become a reality. Of course, it wasn't all for the sake of earning money. It was also to let these country bumpkins see what was called wine. China's wine. Wine without this young master's approval is trash. Only wine with this young master's approval is considered good wine. 10,000 taels of silver for a small jar. He wouldn't lower the price even if his entire family were to be executed. Damn it, they can't even brew wine, yet they still have the nerve to live. Aren't they all going to slit their own throats? Aren't they afraid of making a fool of themselves? In fact, June Moxie's real intention was to sell off this batch and never sell again. In the future, he would only brew 10 to 20 caddies every month, enough for his family to drink. As for others, even if His Majesty the Emperor wanted to drink, young Master June would still stiffen his neck. If I say no, then no. What can you do? First, I'll whet your appetite, then I'll stop it with a crunch. From now on, I'll never brew wine again. Then, I'll let you all go back and drink that trash, making it hard for you all to swallow. June Moxie was looking forward to that time, to the expressions on the faces of these rich nobles. It'll be very exciting, right? It'll be very pleasing to the eye, ha 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 ha, I'm waiting for this kind of excitement. June Moxie hummed a little tune. At that moment the expression on his face could no longer be called an evil monarch, but an evil god. It had to be said that a person who could come up with such a sinister idea was really evil to the extreme. A loud bang came from the main door, coming from afar. It interrupted June Moxie's thoughts, making him very surprised. This is the June family. Is there really someone who comes to cause trouble in broad daylight? Isn't this too novel? His guess couldn't be more correct. A scream came from the main door, and not long after, he heard heavy footsteps coming towards him aggressively. With a bang, the main door of the small courtyard instantly turned into a pile of debris, and a loud voice roared, "June Moxie, you bastard, get out here right now! Why does this scene look like the gangsters coming to find trouble?" At that moment, June Moxie almost thought that he had gone back in time. The sound of thumping sounded, and June Moxie stretched his head to take a look, only to see 7 bear-like strong men like 7 iron towers, each of them swinging their arms, their faces ferocious, and they rushed in at a speed of 1.5 feet with each step. Saving a life is better than building a 7-storied pagoda. Can a 7-storied pagoda be thicker than these 7 men? The legendary pagoda is a tower. June Moxie immediately made a decision and quickly ordered, "You go tell third uncle, don't let him come over, I will handle this, I can definitely handle it. Go tell sister-in-law, don't let her come over either." The only thing that June Moxie was worried about now was that June Wui couldn't help but rush over, and that would be terrible. Although June Wui's current strength had indeed risen to the level of Tianxian, the Tianxian's true qi in his body was extremely unstable, and not all of it could be used for his own use. If he didn't stabilize it for a period of time, and acted rashly, once the Xian qi broke through his meridians, there would really be no way to save the situation. As for Guan Qinghan, no matter what, she was a girl, and her hair was long, but her knowledge was short. Coming over would not help at all. June Moxie could see at a glance that Guan Qinghan's strength could at most deal with the weakest of the 7 men in front of him, and she would most likely lose. Grandfather had gone to the palace, and it seemed that none of the servants in the house could afford to provoke these 7 devil incarnate. Besides, all the big families had a basic tacit understanding, and that was to not get involved in the affairs of the younger generation, and let them toss and turn. It seemed that he would have to go into battle alone. June Moxie obviously knew them. The Dugu families, heroes and legends rush forward, was a famous figure in Tianxiang City, and his reputation was much more resounding than June Moxie's. Although they weren't friends on the same level, but they still saw each other often. The only thing that June Moxie was hesitating about at this time wasn't whether or not he would be abused by these 7 bear-like men, but rather, he was having a headache. If I were to kill or cripple these 7 guys, what would the Dugu family do? Would they go crazy? And would the June family be able to withstand it? Chapter 111. Apart from the fact that some of these fellows were a bit older, and some were a bit more inexperienced and immature, all of them basically looked the same. They looked like septuplets. All of them were tall and sturdy, with round eyes and beards on their cheek. At first glance, these 7 heads looked a bit like a rectangle lying on the ground. They were really too awesome. How did they manage to feed them? This nest of them were all Zhang Fei's ultimate style. If they were brought to modern times to act in the romance of the 3 kingdoms, none of them would need any makeup. Moreover, they would definitely be more original than the original, fiercer than Zhang Fei. Jun Moxie suddenly felt a kind of amazement in his heart. It must have been hard on the 3 brothers of the Dugu family. What kind of tacit understanding did they have for their sons to be born like this? They were really too talented. Jun Moxie, where do you think you're running to? Dugu Ing, who was the leader, had sharp eyes. He saw Jun Moxie at a glance and roared like thunder. The 6 brothers behind him shouted in unison, Jun Moxie, where do you think you're running to? Thunder from the 9 heavens. The flowers and plants in the courtyard were frightened, and they couldn't help but sway in the wind. Jun Moxie was admiring the Creator's uncanny workmanship in his heart. The world was really full of strange things. Suddenly, his vision darkened. 7 iron towers stood in front of him. The 7 big faces were as black as the bottom of a pot, and their 14 eyes were staring fiercely at Jun Moxie. Even the shortest one was half a head taller than Jun Moxie. Those who didn't know would definitely think that Jun Dashao owed these fierce brothers a lot of money. In the past, the story of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs was passed down through the ages. Today, I will personally reveal the unspeakable story of Jun Moxie and the 7 giants. Jun Moxie let his imagination run wild. He took a step back and looked at the 7 brothers. If he didn't take a step back, he would have to look up. Putting on an elegant smile, he said, So it's Big Brother 7 Dugu, my apologies for not recognizing you. I'll call someone to serve tea. Don't even think about slipping away. You're still too inexperienced to play such a trick in front of me. Dugu Ying's face was filled with malevolence as he clenched his fists, causing his knuckles to crackle. Jun Moxie, you really have guts to bully my little sister. You have guts. See if I don't beat your pretty boy face into a persimmon today. What? Bully your sister? Dugu Xiaoi? Where did this come from? What's going on? Jun Moxie was stunned and couldn't figure it out. This time, his expression wasn't fake. I've always been the one being oppressed. When did I turn the tables? I don't know. In his heart, he had a deeper understanding of the saying, the Dugu family has never been reasonable. It's obviously your little sister who bullies me every day. Even if you're distorting the truth, you shouldn't do this, right? I haven't even complained to Grandpa yet, and you're the villains complaining first? This is ridiculous. Just that little girl, Dugu Xiaoi, with your Dugu family's tyranny, who in this world dares to bully her? This is simply an autumn fairy tale. You still dare to deny it. Do you want to deny it? Dugu Xiong roared from the side. Halfway through his roar, he suddenly raised his head in confusion. His large nostrils took 2 deep breaths and blinked. What's that smell? Why is it so fragrant? It's too fragrant. The other 6 people were indeed a family. Almost at the same time, they sensed that something was wrong. This smell was too tempting. They didn't come back to their senses for a moment, but were roused by Dugu Xiong's words. Ignoring Jun Moxie, they all moved their nostrils to search for the smell. Their 7 pairs of nostrils madly inhaled, turning the surroundings into a vacuum. Jun Moxie inexplicably felt a little suffocating. Insufficient oxygen supply? What kind of lung capacity is this? It smells too good. Why does it smell like wine? Dugu Ing closed his eyes and moved his nose, his face full of confidence. Nonsense. How can there be such fragrant wine? I'm going to get drunk. Dugu Xiong was still looking up at the sky with an intoxicated expression. This is definitely not wine. It's immortal wine. Dugu Hao looked like an expert, shaking his head as if he had drunk it before. F***ck off. What a mortal wine. How ignorant, go to the side and stay there. Dugujie cursed. My uncle is your father. Why don't you tell him to go to the side and try? Dugur Hao's face and neck turned red as he retorted sarcastically. Could it be knockout incense? Dugu Chung said it was knockout incense, but his nose was still madly sniffing. Even if it's knockout incense, I'd rather be drugged every day. Heavens, let me be drugged a little longer. What if I can't smell it anymore? Dugushang's face was full of intoxication. Among the 7 brothers, he was the one who sniffed the loudest. Useless! Duguqian despised the conduct of his 6 brothers. He cursed them with infinite contempt, but he himself closed his eyes in intoxication. The 7 of them were all shaking their heads, closing their eyes and sniffing wildly. They didn't notice that less than 10 feet in front of them were extremely conspicuous large jars of wine. The glistening yellow wine inside was emitting an intoxicating fragrance, drilling into their nostrils. June Moxie was dumbfounded. There's actually such a person in this world. And there's 7 of them at once. Nature's creation is indeed wonderful. He couldn't help but cough. Startled by his voice, the 7 brothers finally came to their senses. They opened their eyes with some embarrassment. Seeing June Moxie in front of them, they immediately remembered their mission. Just as they were about to step forward and grab this brat to hand in their mission, the 7 of them suddenly stopped in their tracks. Their 14 eyeballs simultaneously stared. That thing was actually wine. How could wine be so clear and transparent? What kind of wine in this world could emit such an intoxicating fragrance? Big brother, look, is that really wine? Dugujie gulped down his saliva. It's so king fragrant. Nonsense. If it's not wine, can it be vinegar? Does your family's vinegar smell so good? It's really good wine. Why haven't I seen such good wine before? Dugur Hao's saliva dripped onto the floor, but he did not forget to mock them. Don't talk about seeing it, I've never even heard of it. I really want a taste. Dugu Chung used his sleeve to wipe his mouth. With 2 smacking sounds, his sleeve became wet. Nonsense. Who doesn't want a taste? The 6 brothers looked at him in disdain. June Moxie. Dugu Ing let out an earth-shattering roar. Immediately after, his voice became gentle. In your hand, what's that? It was hard to imagine that a fierce man like Zhang Fei could speak in such a gentle manner. Don't you understand? It's a wine cup, what else can it be? Jun Mo Xie swirled the wine in his glass, and accidentally spilled some of the wine in the glass onto the ground. Suddenly, the aroma of the wine in the surrounding became at least twice as strong. The 7 of them widened their eyes at the same time and lowered their heads in unison. Looking at the wet patch on the ground, their eyes were about to spit fire. It was a heinous sin to waste such a fine wine that they had never seen or heard of before. How could this be tolerated? Uncle can tolerate it, but I can't, even we can't tolerate it. I know that's a wine cup. I'm asking you, what's in that wine cup? Duguing growled in a low voice. This is my home. I can put whatever I want in my wine cup. I can put vinegar in it, and I can even pour soy sauce in it. June Moxie did not even bat an eyelid. Instead, he simply crossed his legs and leisurely said, Of course, I can also pour wine. As he said the last 2 words, he raised the wine cup and took another sip. His mouth clicked twice, and as if awakened from a dream, his eyes widened. Right, what are you guys doing here? Hurry up and tell me, if there's nothing else, please leave. The eyes of the Dugu brothers hadn't left Jun Mo Xie's hand. They were still shaking the wine glass in his hand. Their hearts were jumping up and down. They were afraid that even a little bit of the wine would spill out. That would be such a waste of God's gift. We were ordered to capture you, Dugu Xiong replied casually. Before he could finish, Dugu Hao fiercely stomped on his foot, causing him to jump up and down in pain. We were ordered to invite young Master Jun to our residence for a chat. In order to deepen the friendship between the Jun and Dugu families. Dugu Hao strove to put on a refined appearance, shaking his head and emphasizing every word. As he shook his head, the saliva at the corner of his mouth flew in all directions, and June Moxie had no choice but to cover the mouth of the wine cup with his hand. Duguing, who was at the side, suddenly became smart, and understood with just a little bit. He opened his mouth, and was about to speak, but was unable to speak due to the saliva in his mouth. He swallowed it with a gulp, and then said, "Yes, yes, that's what my family's old man meant. The friendship between our two families is deep, and there's no distinction between us. Anything good can be shared." He. The other six nodded in unison, and their movements were orderly. 6 beautiful parabolas appeared at the corners of the mouths of the 6 fierce men. "Aha, old Dugu is too polite." June Moxie's face was full of impatience, and he casually poured the wine in his cup with a schwa sound. The wine had not been diluted yet, and the after-effects were extremely strong. June Moxie naturally didn't want to drink too much. In any case, it wasn't a rare thing. So, he happily stood up and said, "If that's the case, then let's go. We don't want to keep Elder Dugu waiting." Fu *k. The 7 brothers saw that June Moxie had actually poured a large cup of the best quality wine, and simultaneously opened their mouths in unison. "What?" June Moxie dragged out his voice. He. The 7 brothers laughed hollowly at the same time. Duguing said with a drooling face, "Young Master June, our two families have a deep friendship, and we brothers have come together to invite you. This wine of yours, can we have a taste?" June Moxie's face was full of reluctance, and he shook his head like a rattled drum. No, I don't have much here. This is a never-before-seen top-quality wine, and only 1 drop is too strong. Even if 1 drop is not worth 1,000 gold, it's still a drop, and I still have to slowly enjoy it." Saying that, he casually pointed his finger, and said in a regretful tone, "I only have these few jars. If I drink it all, there won't be any left." This time, it did not matter. The 7 brothers' eyes followed the direction of his finger, and suddenly, their eyes could not move away. Chapter 112. The 7 brothers followed June Moxie's finger, and looked in the direction of his finger. And their eyes couldn't move away from that direction. Each of them cursed in their hearts, "You call this not a lot? There are 8 such big jars. There must be at least 50 kilograms in each. So, there must be at least a few hundred kilograms in total. It's a pity that we can only smell it. We can't even taste a drop of it. A drop of it is worth 1,000 gold. Why don't you go and rob us? But this fragrance is worth 1,000 gold. Brothers, are we going to leave now? Haha, didn't you say that you wanted to lead me to pay a visit to Elder Dugu?" June Moxie took a few steps forward, and then turned his head to look. He saw that the 7 men were still in their original positions. Their backs were facing him, and they were looking at the big jars. Their feet were rooted to the ground, and they were motionless. Could it be that there's glue on the ground? There's definitely no glue on the ground. But the magic of the wine is even stronger. Oh, so that's how it is. Brothers, thank you for your silent reminder. June Moxie swayed as he walked back. He shouted in a deep voice, "Come." Several middle-aged female servants appeared at his side. "Young master, what are your orders?" "Young master is careless." "How can you be so careless? You sealed these jars of wine. If it weren't for Elder Brother Dugu's reminder, the smell of the wine would have disappeared." "Then, move them for me." June Moxie paused. The middle-aged female servants were dumbfounded. "Young master isn't muddle-headed, right? Didn't you tell us not to seal them? What's going on now?" The 7 men of the Dugu family were overjoyed when they heard this. They thought that June Moxie wanted to move them for their old master as a gift. So, they couldn't help but scratch their ears and cheeks as they thought about how they would soon be able to eat heartily. "Move it. Move it to my private warehouse. I'll hold a family banquet with the old master and the 3rd master when I come back tonight." June Moxie said sternly, "We also need to invite a few more guests. I'm afraid this wine isn't enough. Prepare some other wine as well. Don't neglect our guests." The maidservants bowed at the same time. Then, one by one, they walked in front of the wine jars, covered the jars, and were about to seal them with mud. Wait. Dugu Ying's movements were incomparably fast. With a big stride, he leapt in front of the wine jars and opened his arms to embrace the world, directly blocking the maidservants outside and firmly protecting the wine jars behind him. His posture was like a towering mountain. Those who didn't know him would think that he was some kind of peerless master. The other 6 Mengnan brothers seemed to have awoken from a dream, and stood up at the same time. Immediately, 7 iron towers stood tall in front of the wine jug, ready to fight. So, this wine is for the June family's banquet tonight. Moreover, it might not even be enough. Doesn't this mean that there won't be any more of this wine after tonight? They didn't think that June Moxie's words were full of loopholes. One moment, he said that he wanted to slowly drink it, and the next moment, he said that he wanted to drink it all during the banquet. It was extremely contradictory. However, when they heard that the wine was about to run out, they all panicked. 7 brothers, what do you mean? June Moxie frowned and asked in bewilderment. My grandfather is still waiting for us tonight. Why don't we go quickly and return quickly? This sentence immediately dispelled the 7 men's thoughts of snatching the wine. So, Marshal June knows about this wine. The other 6 men immediately understood. Like 6 ferocious tigers coming out of the mountains, they instantly restrained June Moxie. Then, they pointed to the east and struck to the west, and struck to the north. In an instant, the 4 maidservants were knocked to the ground. Duguing kept shouting, "Be gentle, don't hurt anyone." Duguqian rushed into the room like a gust of wind, and came out empty-handed. Duguxiong hatefully scolded, "Pigs! You have to go to the kitchen to get bowls." Dugucheng and Dugushang rushed out with a schwa sound. Not long after, they each carried a few large bowls and came back laughing. "Don't spill the wine." Duguying's face was solemn as he warned, "Don't pour the wine from the same wine jar. As usual, drink a little from each jar. Don't drink too much. Quickly drink a few bowls to satisfy your craving. That's all. We'll carry June Moxie and leave quickly. Don't get drunk. 6th brother, I'm talking to you. You're a glutton, remember to drink less." It seemed that these men had been secretly drinking at home, and were very experienced. Of course. The others were already impatient. They rushed to the wine jars like a swarm of bees to scoop up the wine. Then, one by one, they carefully carried the wine back. Squatting in front of the stone table, they formed a circle like a group of military workers. Dugu Ing picked up the wine bowl and sniffed it with nostalgia. Then, he opened his mouth and took a big gulp. He only felt a cold thread flow down his throat. Then, a blazing flame rose from his stomach. In an instant, his entire body felt light as a feather, as if he was about to become an immortal. He loudly praised, "This is indeed good wine, of the highest quality. Those imperial wines that we drank in the past are simply trash. Later, we must find out from that June brat where this good wine is sold." The other 6 men moved in unison and drank a mouthful of wine at the same time. Then, they exhaled in unison. Their eyes were wide open as they raised their heads towards the sky. Then, they held their stomachs and shook their heads. Then, they moaned at the same time in comfort. Oh, the moans of these 7 very rough men sounded like dozens of professionals in a brothel receiving a guest at the same time. Then, they began to move at the same time. Their voices were extremely charming and gentle, converging into a torrent of moans. June Moxie, who was lying on the ground, shivered. He felt as if all the pores on his body were about to explode. It was as if he was walking through a mass grave in the middle of the night. Then, the 7 men rushed to scoop up the wine. From time to time, voices of dispute could be heard. "Boss, you have 2 bowls. I only have one bowl. Seventh brother, get lost. Don't fight with me. It's really good. Why did you push me? Damn. Third brother actually quietly drank 3 bowls. This guy is really shameless. Brothers, let's go, this is it. The 7 brothers did not expect that after they kicked open the door and barged in for such a long time, none of the guards of the Grand Marshal's house had come out to greet them. This was not normal at all. They actually drank wine so unscrupulously. Even June Moxie was a little dumbfounded. This was like a group of robbers breaking into their master's house and drinking wine calmly. Moreover, they were drinking until they were dead drunk. They did not care that the master had already called the police. June Wooey, who had appeared silently, smiled and winked at June Moxie. Then, he disappeared without a sound. At the door, hundreds of June family's guards quietly dispersed. This was a standard strong wine. Moreover, it had not been blended yet. Even if it was converted to the alcohol content of his previous life, it would be at least 70 or 80%. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was pure alcohol. A big bowl was at least half a caddy. June Moxie thought pitifully in his heart. June Moxie seemed to have been thrown to the ground with his xian-qi restrained. None of the brothers paid attention to him, afraid that they would drink less than the others. Of course, this restriction was as good as nothing to June Moxie. At first, they were afraid that they would be discovered. Then, they simply sat up and stared blankly at the 7 brothers fighting. In the end, they simply stood up and stretched their limbs. Then, they crossed their arms and watched from the side. No one had the leisure to pay attention to him. Only for a moment. It was really only for a moment. Bang! Dugu Qian was the youngest. His alcohol tolerance was also the lowest. He was the first to break down. He was the first to fall to the ground. Then, he fell into a deep sleep. Dugu Hao was tripped by him. Dissatisfied, he flew up and kicked Dugu Qian far away. Then, he quickly went to scoop up the wine. Bang! Dugu Chung staggered and fell on his way to scoop up the wine. Bang! 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 The floor was in a mess. There was no other way. The alcohol's strength was too strong. Even a knockout drug would not take effect so quickly. Although there was a difference in alcohol tolerance, it was still dependent on the type of wine. These 7 brothers were basically drunk from one foot to the other. The liquor that June Dashao brewed this time was strong. Moreover, this was just the head of the liquor. It was even more alcoholic than alcohol. Although these 7 brothers had extraordinary alcohol tolerance, they had never drunk such a strong liquor before. It was like a waiter who was used to drinking beer from a young age suddenly drinking a cup of ergot. At first, it was not much. He could even drink a few more bowls. However, once the alcohol kicked in, he would not be able to wake up from this drunken dream for a few days. Moreover, these 7 brothers of the Dugu family had drunk at least 3 or 4 large bowls. For a moment, June Moxie's small courtyard was filled with thunderous snores. Although he had successfully solved this problem, June Moxie was extremely frustrated. It was all because of these 7 brothers. If you want to sleep, then go to sleep. Why are you snoring? I can tolerate it. But there are a few people who not only snore but also grind their teeth, whistle, and even fart. It can be said that they are very rhythmic. Squeak! As June Moxie was vexed, Duguing on the ground had already started to whistle again. June Moxie kicked him on the buttocks. Hatefully, he scolded, "What are you shouting for?" The whistling stopped abruptly. Duguing was kicked over. Facing the sky, he muttered in the air, "Good wine." On top of the wall of the neighboring courtyard, Guan Qing Han was hiding behind a flowering tree. She was dressed in a snow-white outfit. She was standing there with a pair of big, frosty eyes. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had received a notice from Kuer warning her not to come. But she still came. Guan Qing Han had been standing there with her sword since the Dugu family's 7 brothers had smashed open the door. If the Dugu family's 7 brothers were to hurt June Moxie or take away June Moxie, Guan Qing Han would immediately act. Even if she knew that she was no match for them, she would still fight with all her might. Although this brat June Moxie was not pleasing to the eye, he was still the only successor of the June family's 3rd generation. Moreover, he was her brother-in-law. No matter what, she couldn't just sit by and watch him get hurt. Especially since this brat had become more like a human recently. However, the next scene caused Guan Qing Han's eyes to slowly widen, and she even felt a bit of admiration for him. From the very beginning, June Moxie's calm and unhurried attitude had surprised Guan Qing Han a lot. In her memory, June Moxie would have been scared into a puddle of mud by now. It was not uncommon for him to be so scared that he would wet his pants. But today it was completely different. Step by step, he had lured the Dugu family's 7 brothers into his trap. He had made them willingly jump in as if they had taken advantage of him. Then, he had impatiently drunk himself into a drunken stupor. Although these 7 men were extremely crude, but such an outcome had left Guan Qing Han extremely surprised. Is this still my debauchee and cowardly brother-in-law, June Moxie? Sighing faintly, Guan Qing Han disappeared without a sound. Thank you for the first leader of this book. Thank you. Brother, you don't understand. Brother, Feng Ling really doesn't deserve your kindness and generosity. Thank you for your support. Haha, I'm going to say too much here. As for tipping and urging for updates, my brothers and sisters should act according to their capabilities. Take care of your own lives first and don't make things difficult for yourself. If everyone is happy and healthy, then that's the best thing that can happen. Subscribing to this book is already a great support. As for the rewards, it was a token of appreciation from his brothers and sisters. Feng Ling was very grateful. Feng Ling considered himself a commoner. Of course, he liked money. He would never pretend to be virtuous and refuse anything. I won't deny this. But in my heart, my brothers' and sisters' feelings and bodies are more important than this. I appreciate your kindness. I accept the rewards. But you must promise me to take care of yourselves first. Don't exceed your own capabilities. Otherwise, my heart will not be at ease. Having all of you is the biggest gain from this book. Thank you. Chapter 113. A sharp whistling sound came from the sky, an array of blue light flew down like a meteor and landed directly in June Moxie's courtyard. It was June Tian. Grandpa June was stunned the moment he returned. He had thought that even if his grandson had not been captured, he would at least have been tortured. Although his grandson had made great progress recently, he had not broken through to the 9th level. His defeat and capture were all within his expectations. He had prepared himself to go to Duguzongheng to get his grandson to vent his anger and take revenge when he saw that his grandson was not around. Who would have thought that he would see such a situation? Surprise? Surprise? Horror! Isn't this too dramatic? His grandson was sitting there safe and sound, while the 7 kids of the Dugu family were lying unconscious on the ground. Well, the old man had to admit that he was wrong. These 7 kids weren't unconscious, but they were drunk to death. June Tian rubbed his eyes. He still could not believe it and could not understand it. He was very curious as to how his grandson could achieve such a brilliant result. He was actually drinking wine with the people who came to capture him and even made them all drunk. Although Grandpa June knew that the wine his grandson brewed was very strong, he still felt that he had miscalculated when he saw the scene in front of him. Seeing that his grandson was fine, Grandpa June said a few words and slowly walked out with his hands behind his back. Well, I will not participate in this kind of matter. When Duguzongheng and Duguzongheng returned home, they heard that their 7 grandsons had already gone to find trouble with June Emosia in a fit of rage. Duguzongheng and Duguzongheng felt even more regret. Looking at June Tian's appearance, if these 7 grandsons had really gone too far this time, I'm afraid that the Dugu family and the June family will really have to fight to the death. Sigh, if only I had not been so impulsive and had talked to that old bastard June Jean Tian first. Or the father and son pair stared at each other, feeling as if they were sitting on pins and needles. In terms of strength, the Dugu family naturally didn't fear the June family. However, if the 2 families were to really go to war, then no one would be able to bear the consequences. Moreover, June Jean Tian didn't have much hope at the moment. So, he didn't even have a way out. So, he had to drag someone down with him even if he had to die. And, if the 2 families were to go to war, then it wouldn't just be the Dugu family that would have to be the June family's scapegoat. In fact, even the entire Tian-Xiang Empire would have to be the June family's scapegoat. Things were getting serious. Dugu Zongheng paced back and forth in the main hall, restless and restless. Great General Dugu Wudi, who was watching from the side, felt dizzy, but did not dare to make a sound. Seeing that the sun was setting in the west, the father and son pair finally felt that something was wrong. Why hadn't they returned yet? Don't tell me that those kids didn't hold back when they caught June Mo Xie and crippled him. Then, he bumped into the returning old man June. In a fit of rage, my goodness, June Jean Tian wouldn't be so ungentlemanly, right? The father and son pair seemed to have a tacit understanding, and thought of this possibility. They looked at each other, and saw the deep astonishment in each other's eyes. At this moment, a guard ran over, reporting to the Lord, the June family's young master, June Moxie, has sent someone to deliver something. Bring it up. Dugu Zongheng had a faint feeling that something was wrong. But, since it was something that June Moxie had sent, it meant that the kid was probably fine. Feeling slightly relieved, he turned around and sat down on the armchair. June Moxie had only sent a small bundle. Dugu Zongheng held it in his hand and squeezed it. His complexion changed as he turned it upside down, and a few things fell on the table with a few crashing sounds. Trash. A bunch of trash. Dugu Zongheng furiously jumped up, and kicked Great General Dugu Wudi twice. Look at what you've raised. Dugu Zongheng's fingers trembled. Look, 7 against 1, and they were all captured alive. Even the family's jade pendant was sent back. How shameful, how shameful! Suddenly caught in the crossfire, Dugu Wudi clutched his buttocks and screamed in pain. What do you mean by what I've raised? Don't tell me that those 7 weren't raised by you? The jade pendants that June Mo Xie had brought back were worn by the 7 Dugu brothers. Only the direct descendants of the Dugu family would be able to wear them. It was a symbol of their status. There was also a small note inside. The 7 Dugu brothers are guests at the June family's residence. We've been getting along very well, and they'll be back in 2 or 3 months. Don't worry, Great General Dugu. Guess? Return in 2 or 3 months. Don't worry? Dugu Zongheng was so angry that his nose was crooked. Wudi, you go immediately and bring these 7 good-for-nothings back to me. I want to skin them one by one. Dugu Wudi felt as if he had been pardoned, and shot out like an arrow. Immediately after, he heard the sound of galloping in the courtyard, and the sound of horses' hooves rang out like a torrential downpour. Great General Dugu Wudi had brought 100 of his personal guards to the June family's residence, and had requested an audience in a very formal manner. His 7 nephews could have recklessly barged in without any scruples. That was just a youthful act of foolishness, and it could also be considered the prerogative of youths to act carelessly. But Dugu Wudi had personally come, and could not be so rash. Even if he was rude and unreasonable, he was still one of the few great generals of the Tian-Xiang Empire. A servant took out the great general's name card and handed it over, saying that he wished to see Old Master June Jean Tian. The gatekeeper politely accepted it, and replied that the old master was not present, and had just gone out to visit a friend. Dugu Wudi immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. You obviously just came back from a fight with this old man, and I came right after. Even if I don't say that I came first, it's more or less the same, and now you're saying that you went out to visit a friend? If you hadn't captured my son and nephew and gained the upper hand, would you have been able to relax so easily? Who are you trying to fool? Of course, thinking was just thinking. People under the eaves had no choice but to lower their heads. So, he went on to request an audience with Jun Wui. Third Master Jun, your son's legs aren't very nimble. He wouldn't have gone to visit a friend, would he? The gatekeeper had yet to go in to deliver the message when he heard a smiling voice. So, it really is Brother Dugu who has graced us with his presence. Wu Yi is truly overjoyed. Ah! How could you be so tactless? What is there to report? Why are you not lining up to welcome us? Dugu Wudi looked over, and saw a wheelchair slowly coming out of the inner courtyard. Jun Wui was dressed in a green robe, and was sitting peacefully on it, looking at Dugu Wudi with a calm smile on his face. The Jun Wui in front of him was no different from before, but Dugu Wudi's senses, tempered by his experience in the battlefield, instinctively felt that something was wrong. Calm. Yes, too calm. It was just that it was too quiet, so quiet that it caused fear and dread. What an awe-inspiring aura! In addition, under Jun Wui's sharp eyebrows and gentle eyes, Dugu Wudi could clearly feel a proud and aloof sword pointing towards the heavens. It was as if a peerless divine weapon that had been covered in dust for many years was about to be unsheathed, its edge reappearing, and the roars of dragons and tigers resounding throughout the world. At this moment, Dugu Wudi suddenly had an illusion that the person in front of him was not the crippled Jun Wui for 10 years, but the general in white from back then. The one who had once laughed arrogantly under the heavens, the one who had commanded the entire Xian continent, the soul of the army, Jun Wuhui. Jun Moxie's father, the iron-fisted general who had emerged victorious in every battle, the invincible god of war. In that instant, Dugu Wudi felt an indescribable sense of respect. Jun Wuhui. That was the person Dugu Wudi respected the most in his life, the person he looked up to, and also Dugu Wudi's biggest goal in this life. Dugu Wudi used to be a general under Jun Wuhui's tent. Even now, he would still recall those extraordinary years when he was in the army every night. Wudi, when I return victorious, you and I will join hands and defeat Tangshanxi. Ha ha! These were the words Dugu Wudi had said before Jun Wuhui left for battle. Dugu Wudi had gone to make a grand farewell, and Jun Wuhui had patted Dugu Wudi's shoulder. This was also the last time the two brothers, Wuhui and Wudi, would meet each other in this lifetime. These were the words Dugu Wudi would repeat every time he got drunk for more than 10 years. Big. Dugu Wudi excitedly took 2 steps forward. He was about to call out Big Brother when he suddenly woke up from his daze. The person in front of him was clearly Jun Wui. Jun Wui, who was sitting in a wheelchair. Jun Wui, who had been crippled for 10 years. At this moment, Dugu Wudi was in a trance, and his tiger-like eyes became somewhat moist. Brother Dugu? Jun Wui looked at him indifferently. He looked at this old comrade and brother who had fought side by side with him. There was not the slightest emotion in his sharp eyes. It was as calm as water, as cold as water, and as awe-inspiring as water. Although the Jun family was still one of the big families in Tianxiang after the death of the 2 heroes of the Jun family, it was no longer the same as before. The Dugu family suddenly rose at this time and took away half of the military power from the Jun family in one fell swoop. Although it was clear that this was the emperor's way of balancing the situation, and it had nothing to do with anyone, Jun Wui still felt aggrieved in his heart. He felt aggrieved for the Jun family, aggrieved for his father, and even more aggrieved for his late brother, Wu Hui. He even felt that Dugu Wudi was unworthy of his big brother's care and promotion. After so many years of being crippled, Jun Wui's heart was already brewing like a volcano. Therefore, he did not show the slightest bit of politeness towards Dugu Wudi, this old comrade and good friend of his. Few people in the capital were not afraid of this great General Dugawudi, except for the elders of the various families. But Junwui was not afraid. Not only was he not afraid, but he also ridiculed Dugawudi every time they met. Dugawudi was left speechless every time, unable to face him. Third brother, your foolish brother is here to greet you. You've been feeling better recently, right? Ha ha, ha ha. Dugawudi was only afraid of a few people in Tianxiang City. But this Junwui was undoubtedly one of the people he wanted to avoid the most. If it weren't for the fact that this matter had happened so suddenly, he would not have been willing to face this old friend of his. Great General Dugu forced himself to calm down and squeezed out a smile on his face. I heard that our 7 little bastards are ignorant and have caused a lot of trouble in the residence. So, they were forced to stay as guests. This foolish brother has come to take them back, and teach them a good lesson. I must ask them how they got the guts to cause trouble in the Jun family, and whose backing they are relying on. Even the third Master Jun, who was usually calm, almost laughed out loud. Whose backing? You really have the nerve to say that. Chapter 114. The guard replied solemnly. Yes, the 7 Dugu young masters have indeed come to look for the third young master. As for the other details, this subordinate does not know. This guard was once a subordinate of Junwui, so how could he not understand the meaning behind his words? So that's how it is. This matter is most likely a joke between the younger generation, so what does it have to do with me? Junwui looked at Dugawudi indifferently and leisurely asked, Brother Dugu, this matter of the younger generation is really an injustice for Brother Dugu to personally come here. Haha, you really have a deep affection for your children, ah. Dugawudi's hairy face suddenly turned red as he stammered. I don't care about the lives of those brats, it's only because the old master was worried and asked me to come and see. If those 7 brats are not sensible and actually cause trouble for the Jun family, then wouldn't that be terrible? Yes, haha, it would be terrible. Junwui smiled faintly and said, But as the elders of the Jun family, we don't care about these matters between the younger generation. If Brother Dugu wants to look for them, then it's better to speak directly to my nephew Emosia. My body has always been feeling unwell, and I only spoke a few words, and now I'm feeling unwell, I'm sorry ah. Dugawudi's face turned purple as he stammered for a long time, but was unable to speak. You want me to speak directly to Jun Moxie? What is this? What is my identity? What is his identity? No matter what, I'm still an elder ah. But third Master Jun's body is not well, and everyone knows that he has already spoken with me. This is already giving me face, and if I continue to insist, then I'll be really embarrassed. Come, quickly lead General Dugu to the young master's courtyard. Junwui smiled and cupped his fists. Brother Dugu, please go ahead. I think you're not unfamiliar with the Jun family. This little brother is a little tired, so I'll go back first. Go ahead, third brother. Take care. Dugawudi forced a smile as he felt uncomfortable all over. Although the Dugu family had never done anything wrong to the Jun family, but they had still been brought up by His Majesty to oppose the Jun family. Moreover, the Dugu family had just been mysteriously killed in battle. So, it was no wonder that Junwui was prejudiced against them. Dugawudi had been trying to resolve this misunderstanding all these years. He had a clear conscience, but he had always felt that he was inexplicably inferior to Junwui every time he faced him. In his honest heart, not having accompanied Junwui through life and death that year was already a big mistake. In the end, his family still. Although the Dugu family secretly wanted to protect the Jun family, but Jun Moxie, this kind of brat, wouldn't be beaten up 10 times. Take it as teaching Jun Wu Hui's son a lesson. With a sigh, Dugawudi walked into the Jun residence. The imposing manner he had when he came out of the house had already disappeared. He knew that Junwui was warning him that it was best to let the younger generation deal with their own matters. As an elder, it was inappropriate for him to rashly intervene. Dugu Wuti wanted to roar, "I also don't want to intervene." But he didn't know why, but when he saw Jun Wui's indifferent face and that similar charm, the more he looked at him, the more he looked like his most respected big brother. Unexpectedly, he didn't feel offended at all. From afar, he saw Jun Moxie standing at the door. Great General Dugu's imposing manner couldn't help but recover a bit. "I didn't dare to do anything when I saw that your third uncle was in the wrong. But you took liberties with my daughter, so how can I not be in the wrong? Just wait and see how I'll deal with you. The little courtyard behind that brat, how come it doesn't even have a courtyard gate?" Gate? The door had naturally been smashed by Dugu Ing and his brothers. Young Master Jun was very polite as he bowed from afar. "So it is Uncle Dugu who has graced this little nephew with his presence. Your presence brings light to this little nephew's face. Ha, please come in." He waved his hand to let them in. Great General Dugu didn't stand on ceremony as he walked in with a straight face. Then, he saw that the courtyard behind Jun Moxie was in a mess. Dugu Wuti sucked in a breath of air. How did it end up like this? Where are those 7 little bastards? I'll teach them a lesson. Dugu Wuti was furious. "I've clearly instructed you to capture Jun Moxie and not to touch anything else in the Jun residence. How did you end up like this? What should I do? No matter what, those 7 bastards are in the wrong." His imposing manner inevitably dropped by 30%. The 7 Dugu brothers saw that the wine in our residence was quite good, so they drank a bit more. Ha. Jun Moxie smiled, but his face didn't move. "They have already gone to bed. Good wine? Drank a bit more? Haven't you drunk wine in several lifetimes? How did they get drunk and fall asleep? Bah! How did I raise these useless things?" Dugu Wuti's face suddenly turned black. "Take me there." He turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly turned his head and pointed a carrot-thick finger at Jun Moxie. "Brat, I'm warning you. Don't provoke my daughter again. For the sake of your father and third uncle, I'll let you go this time. But if there's a next time, I'll tear you to pieces and feed them to the dogs." Jun Moxie smiled as he looked at him. His eyes flashed as he slowly stretched out his hand and pushed the finger away. Then, he pointed at Dugu Wuti. "Old brat, I don't care if you're a famous troublemaker or not, but don't act shamelessly in the Jun residence. This young master won't fall for it. I'll also warn you, don't let your daughter pester me in the future. This time, I'll let it go for the sake of our friendship. But if there's a next time, this young master will make you my son's grandfather." Dugu Wuti's vision darkened and he almost fell to the ground. It wasn't that he didn't know his nickname of troublemaker, but this guy was definitely the first in the court who dared to say it to his face. How could he not be angry? He opened his large hand and was about to hit him. Jun Moxie didn't dodge. Instead, he straightened his back and raised his face. Humph! Dugu Wuti didn't hit him in the end. No matter what, this was Brother Wu Hui's son. It was fine if his own son and nephew beat him up, but it would be a bit inappropriate. Suppressing her anger, she followed Jun Moxie to the door of the room. She could hear the sound of snoring coming from inside. It was rhythmic and rhythmic. He couldn't help but be enraged. He kicked the door open and roared, "All of you, get out of here!" The snoring continued. A strong aroma of wine rushed out of the room. Dugu Wuti couldn't help but twitch his nose. What wine is this? Why is it so fragrant? Only then did he come to his senses. His son and nephew were still sleeping. General Dugu's heart was filled with anger. He flew in, only to hear bang 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 bang, sounds like he was hitting a sandbag. He was punched and kicked. The snoring continued. Dugu Wuti was dumbfounded. Jun Dashao snickered. "Do you think this young master's wine is ordinary? At this critical juncture, they won't wake up even if you beat them to death. They've drunk so much high-grade wine. If they don't have the right method, they might even die from drinking. The best part is yet to come. Men, carry these 7 bastards out. Dugu Wuti felt that he had lost all his face today. He had lost his entire life today, but he didn't know that this so-called losing face was just the beginning. Wait! June Moxie sneered. How can the great general come and go as he pleases? What kind of place does your Dugu family think our June family is? What else do you want? Dugu Wuti turned around fiercely. He was about to lose control of his temper. I've already forgiven you for seducing my precious daughter, but you still dare to nitpick? You don't want to live anymore. As the saying goes, killing is just a matter of nodding your head to the ground. The 7 young masters of the Dugu family arrived at the June family's residence and broke 2 red sandalwood doors. That's 1,000 taels of silver. You injured 3 maidservants, 500 taels of silver for their medical expenses. You broke my courtyard's doors, 300 taels of silver. June Moxie raised his fingers and calculated each and every one of them. You even restrained me by force and drank my top-grade wine without my permission. Since we are old friends, I'll give you a discount. As long as you give me 25 million taels of silver, the great general can take the 7 Dugu young masters away. What? Dugu Wuti roared, shaking the bodyguards behind him so much that they staggered back. 25 million taels? That's right. Even if it's 25 million taels of silver, I'll eliminate the small change. June Moxie's expression did not change. He looked very magnanimous. I'll spit on your face. 25 million taels of silver. I want to know how these brats managed to drink 25 million taels of wine. If you can't explain yourself, I'll find Grandpa June and ask him where the June family inherited this extortion trick. Dugu Wuti was so angry that he started laughing. June Moxie remained unmoved. Lengling smiled. If it was just an ordinary wine, even if the 7 Dugu young masters drank themselves to death, they still wouldn't be able to drink it at such a price. But this wine of mine is unique in this world. Moreover, the young masters drank the head of the wine. A large jar of the head of the wine weighs 50 jin. Every jin of wine can be divided into 50 small cups, and every cup can be blended into a jar of top-grade wine. And this jar of wine is sold for 10,000 taels of silver. So the total is 25 million taels of silver. As for the other losses I mentioned earlier, I'll let you off the hook so as to avoid harming the friendship between our 2 families. Moreover, the price of a cup of wine is 10,000 taels of silver. It's definitely a fair price. June Moxie's face was serious. No one could tell that he was joking. I'll screw your third uncle. Dugu Wuti cursed. You think you can become an immortal just by drinking this broken wine? General Dugu was so angry that he was about to explode. The entire Tian Xiang Empire's annual military expenditure was only 30 million silver taels, and his 3 sons and 4 nephews had spent almost the entire empire's annual military expenditure on a single drink? Wasn't this clearly extortion? Fair trade, good quality, and cheap? Great General, please be careful with your words. Do not involve my third uncle. As the saying goes, the rarer something is, the greater its value. This wine is unique to me in this world. If I say 10,000 taels of silver for a cup, then it means 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. If it were someone else, I wouldn't be willing to sell it for 10,000 taels of silver. June Moxie snorted twice and placed the 2 cups on the table. He picked up a jar of wine from the side and poured a cup. Then, he scooped a cup of wine from the jar and placed it on the table. He gestured for them to taste it. Chapter 115. Today's third update has arrived. My apologies, I was too tired and overslept. Dugu Wuti sat down angrily, grabbed a cup, tilted his head back, and gulped it down. Suddenly, his tiger-like eyes opened wide and he couldn't help but praise. Good wine. It's really good wine. I've never seen or heard of it before. This is a blended wine. June Moxie smiled like a fox. Dare I ask, Great General, is it not worth 10,000 taels of silver for a jar? Duguwoodi smacked his lips and blurted out, It's worth it. It's too. He immediately glared at him. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. You're selling a jar of wine for 10,000 taels of silver? Why don't you just rob a bank? 10,000 taels of silver is 10,000 taels of silver. It's a fixed price. It's up to you whether you want to buy it or not. I can't do anything if the Great General goes against his conscience and lies. June Moxie rolled his eyes. He pushed the cup of wine over and said, This is the wine's head. Great General Dugu, would you like to try the 10,000 taels of wine for a cup? This cup is a gift from your nephew to the elders. Duguwoodi snorted twice. He wanted to say no, but he couldn't resist the temptation. He grinned and said, The wine is indeed good, but no matter how much I taste it, I can't go for 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. He curled his lips, grabbed the cup, and quickly poured the wine into his mouth. A whoa! An ice-cold thread slid down his throat, and a bang sound was heard as a volcano erupted in his heart. Invincible Dugu felt as if his entire body's blood was on fire. He felt a little dizzy after drinking the cup. He tried his best to restrain himself, but his eyes had already turned bloodshot. Good wine. It's worthy of being called a wine's head. Duguwoodi raised his head and swung the cup in his mouth. Then, he slammed it down on the table. Another cup! 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. No bargaining. June Moxie snorted. General Dugu, you drank 10,000 taels of silver in one go. He actually wanted another cup? You even said that this heavenly wine isn't worth the price. Previously, this cup was a gift. If you want to drink more, I can't afford it. This wine is really good wine, but no matter what, it can't be worth 10,000 taels of silver a cup, right? Duguwoodi's eyes greedily looked at the wine jug in the room. He wanted to snatch it away, but he refused to admit it. What a joke! This was a matter of principle. The Dugu family would go bankrupt on the spot if he accepted this 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. Does Great General Dugu intend to renege on this debt? June Moxie sneered and said, Or is it that the Dugu family broke into my June family's residence, smashed everything, humiliated me, and then robbed my family of the only heaven's wine in the world? And now, all of this is over with just a few words? Just let it go. My June family doesn't even have this much face? Do you think you can just let your Dugu family bully us like this? That's what you said. I didn't say that. Duguwoodi jumped up. This crime was too big. Even General Duguwoodi couldn't bear it. Since you didn't say that, does that mean that General Dugu believes that the Dugu family needs to compensate our June family for this? June Moxie said patiently. Of course we need to compensate. Although are the Dugu family. That's great. Thank you for your kindness. 25 million taels of silver. June Moxie interrupted him with a beaming smile. Crap. Bastard. Duguwoodi was dumbstruck. He spun around 3 times and scratched his head. After a long time, he finally said, You didn't even sell this wine. How do you know that it's worth 10,000 taels of silver? Isn't this taking advantage of my family? Do you think that I have to approve of your wine just because you set a sky-high price? That's not reasonable. According to General Dugu, you want me to sell this wine for a certain amount. Then, you'll agree to it? June Moxie asked. That's right. No, that's not it. What I'm saying is that if you can mix the same jar of wine into fine wine and sell it for a price that everyone agrees with, then my Dugu family will accept this debt. Duguwoodi smiled proudly. I've finally found a way to deal with this brat. Your wine is indeed of the highest quality, but it can only be sold for 180 taels of silver. Although it's not a small amount, it can't be sold for 25 million taels of silver. Good. It's a deal. But before that, Your Dugu family is not allowed to cause trouble for me. June Moxie immediately decided. Good. But it must be within 3 months. During this time, if you provoke my daughter, I will still beat you up. Dugu Woody snorted twice. He looked at the greasy-haired brat in front of him and felt that his evil plan had succeeded. If you can't sell the wine for 25 million taels of silver, then you will supply my Dugu family's wine for free. How about it? Do you dare to accept this bet? After going around in circles for a long time, General Dugu finally revealed his true intentions. I have full confidence in my wine, so it's a deal. But you must also keep an eye on your daughter. If she comes looking for me, I will not be responsible for what happens. June Moxie snorted twice in his heart. Your Dugu family can just wait to carry this mountain of debt. I'll let you be arrogant. Don't say 10,000 taels of silver for a jar. Even if it's more, it's still going to be him crying. June Moxie sent a carriage. Dugu Woody gave the order, and his subordinates picked up the 7 brothers. They looked like dead pigs and threw them into the carriage. Then General Dugu walked away, looking back 3 times at every step. He really could not bear to part with that heavenly wine. This brat is too stingy. Why didn't he give me another cup just now? June Moxie watched him leave and returned to his room with a smile. However, he did not take this matter to heart. He stroked his chin and pondered. The current June family is still too weak. Although I used medicine to raise third Uncle Xian Qi to the Tian Xian level, but he is still only at the primary level of Tian Xian. I reckon that my current strength is still not as good as the magnificent Jewel Hall. Perhaps I should also raise grandfather's strength. Don't I have that level 9 Xian Dan in my hands? I can make the best use of it. If I make good use of it, I should be able to raise grandfather's strength to the intermediate level of Great Master Shen Xian. But how should I use that thing? I don't know anything about it. How should I solve this problem? June Moxie's heart was having a headache for a long time. He had wanted to release this news countless times to attract strong people from all over the continent, but he had never been able to make up his mind. The weight of a level 9 Xian Dan was definitely enough. He believed that even a master like Great Master Shen Xian would be tempted. Or it should be said that as long as one had enough power and strength, no one would not be tempted. But doing this was undoubtedly playing with fire, and the current June family could not afford to play with it. Even if the June family had 2 Tian Xian experts, they still could not afford to play with it. The truth was cruel. Although the Tian Xian experts were close to the peak of strength in this world, they were still powerless in the face of a higher-level existence. The territory of Tian Xiang Kingdom could not be said to be small. But in the entire continent it was only 11. Even so, it could be said that there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Although there were not many strong people who had appeared, but June Moxie knew that there must be countless strong people hiding in the streets and mountains. Although the strength of his grandfather and third uncle were not weak, they were not enough to rely on. He believed that once the wind and clouds gathered, there would be a storm, and the level 9 Xian Dan in his hands was the best catalyst. Whether it was an Earth Xian expert like Tian Xian or Great Master Shen Xian, no one would not want to get their hands on this thing. Once this news was spread, many strong people would gather and blood would be spilled everywhere. Not to mention the June family, even the entire Tian Xiang Kingdom would be razed to the ground in a single night if they weren't careful. It wouldn't be impossible for them to do so. But if he did not attract these people, how would he be able to obtain the method and conditions to consume this top-quality Xian Dan? How would the June family's overall strength increase? Could it be that he would have to sit on a mountain of treasure and return empty-handed? This would be very difficult. June Moxie frowned and thought for a long time. He could not make a decision. Should he play it safe or should he take the risk? Suddenly looking up at the sky, he could not help but think of his previous life. He had traveled the entire world alone and had never feared anything. Why is it that in this world, my hands and feet are tied? Thinking of this, a sudden burst of arrogance burst forth from his heart. He could not help but laugh and immediately made a decision. As the saying goes, how can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Even if today's decision attracts a lot of Xian, what do I have to fear? This is not a simple matter of Xianqi. The real test is one's wisdom. The evil monarch's schemes, who has he been afraid of? Even if Xian is as numerous as the clouds, I have endless ways to deal with him. Jun Moxie made up his mind and finally smiled. He habitually rubbed his chin with his right hand. If his fellow disciples from his previous life were to see this expression on his face, they would immediately run as far away as they could. Because this means that the evil monarch has made an extremely bold, no, it should be said to be a very crazy decision. Moreover, this decision, regardless of the final outcome, will shock the world. Looking out the window, the sun was gradually setting. Little Cook quietly came in and reported, "Young master, the old master invites you over for dinner." Jun Moxie made an O sound. "Grandfather, why are you so happy today? Could it be that something good has happened?" Jun Moxie couldn't help but ask as he looked at Jun Tian's face that was filled with schadenfreude. "But I'm dying of laughter. That old bastard Li Shang, I don't know where he got his hands on a folk prescription. He said that the seabed jade coral can cure his damaged dantian and had his grandson buy it for a sky-high price of 5 million liangs. As a result, after preparing for a few days, he impatiently began to use the jade coral to practice and recover his strength. Guess what happened?" Grandpa Jun laughed so hard that his eyes narrowed and his whole body twitched. "What's wrong? Can't it work? You bought a piece of trash and it's not useful?" Jun Moxie followed the old master's train of thought and asked. Right now, the old master needed a sidekick, but the third uncle did not hear it. Wah ha ha ha! Grandpa Jun slapped the table with one hand and slapped his thigh with the other. He laughed so hard that tears almost flowed out. "It's not a piece of trash, it's not that it can't be used. It's simply too good, too useful. Ha ha, in the end, this old man can't even breathe. I'm dying of laughter." Grandpa Jun drank a mouthful of water and choked for a while before saying, "I heard that at the most critical moment, the jade coral unexpectedly exploded. It's really too good. Wah ha ha ha." Chapter 116. Pft. Jun Moxie was drinking a mouthful of wine when he heard those words. He choked and sprayed a drop of wine onto the third uncle, Jun Wui, causing him to cough even more violently. "Waha! That old bastard Li Shang has overreached himself. Not only has his dantian recovered, but his meridians have also been greatly damaged. He's on the verge of death. Even his most beloved grandson, Li Yuran, has been affected." Grandpa Jun hadn't laughed so heartily for many years. "I heard that the pretty boy's face was directly disfigured." Wahaha Jun Moxie held the wine cup in his hand. He was flabbergasted. I originally only wanted to cause a little damage. In all honesty, at that time, I really did not expect such a glorious result. I only wanted to destroy the jade coral. I really had no other intentions. As for the Grand Preceptor Li Shang being seriously injured and Li Yuran being disfigured, I really did not think about it. I am very innocent, although I wanted to be a little worse. At that time, I actually waved my hand casually to create such a good situation. The gods make fools of people. Just for this matter. Today we must get drunk." Grandpa Jun laughed heartily and raised his glass of wine. This matter is indeed frightening. But father, if the Grand Preceptor Li Shang is really unable to cure him and dies, we also need to be careful of the Li family's movements. Li Shang's blood god guards could be said to have shaken the world for a period of time. No one dared to look down on them, and they are incomparably loyal to Li Shang. If Li Shang really dies, these people will definitely vent their anger. But if they want to vent their anger, their first target will be our June family. We have to be on guard against this. So, we need to make some preparations in advance, Jun Woo-yi smiled. He then calmed his mind and spoke slowly. That's right. Grandpa Jun put down his glass of wine. If that old man really dies, although the Lee family will not be able to return to its former glory, the backlash from those men of sacrifice will also be a headache. Even if he didn't die, this would definitely be the reason for chaos. Wu-yi, most of the Jun family's strength is now in your hands. So, how do you think we should handle this matter? Jun Woo-yi furrowed his brows and said, if we're talking about adapting to the situation, we still have to consider Grand Preceptor Lee's final life and death as the prerequisite. If he survives this, all the arrangements will be wasted. The best countermeasure is to deal with the myriad of changes by not changing. Gathering the core strength together and not giving the opponent a chance to break us down one by one is the best strategy. I believe that our Jun family's strength can ensure their safety. I'm only worried about General Shun and the others. They've been following us all these years. So, it can be said that their hatred with the Lee family isn't deep. So, if something were to happen to them, then they might encounter some misfortune. Jun Moxie smiled. Third uncle's words are certainly wise words, but you are worrying too much. Any one of these generals was an iron-blooded warrior who had survived hundreds of battles. His sensitivity to danger was definitely deeper than anyone else's. Otherwise, wouldn't they have already died in battle? As long as they receive this news, their first reaction will be to respond to it and ensure their own safety. If they can't even protect their own safety, then how can they go into battle and kill the enemy? Jun Moxie smiled as he said this. Then, he raised his eyebrows and said ruthlessly, if they don't even have this ability and we still need to send people to protect them when things come to a head, then what's the use of such trash? What's the point of abandoning them? What's the point of hurting them? Jun Zhantian and Jun Woo-yi were stunned at the same time. They looked at each other in dismay, not knowing how to react. These two men were commanders who had fought hundreds of battles in the army. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they loved their soldiers like their own children. They treated the soldiers under them like brothers and nephews. So, they naturally disapproved of Jun Moxie's incomparably ruthless words. Emosia, you can't say things like that. These people have followed our Jun family for many years. How can we abandon them? Jun Zhantian was a little angry. He stroked his beard and said in a displeased manner, this is the basic integrity of a person. We share weal and woe, and never abandon each other in life or death. Your way of thinking is too. Grandpa Jun didn't finish his sentence, but the criticism in his words was very obvious. Grandpa, Emosia doesn't agree with your words. Let me ask you something. If you only care about these incompetent people and cause the death of countless soldiers, then you should understand the pros and cons of this matter, right? The border has been unstable these past few years, and there have been battles all year round. And those people that third uncle mentioned before are all veteran generals in the army. It's inevitable that they will lead their troops to face the enemy. And if a general is incompetent, then thousands of soldiers will die. For me, if a person is really incompetent, then it's better to simply give up. Otherwise, if they are entrusted with heavy responsibilities, then the overall situation is bound to be ruined. At certain critical moments, it might even shake the foundation of the country. How can this be a trivial matter? This is a matter of great right and wrong. How can it be that we are heartless? Jun Moxie boldly retorted, I just mentioned that if a general is incompetent, then thousands of soldiers will die from exhaustion, and the position will be lost. If it's serious, then the enemy will break through, and the entire army will be routed. Even the foundation of the country will be shaken, and the country will be destroyed. This is definitely not alarmist talk. Grandpa and third uncle also understand this truth. At critical moments, we must make a painful decision. Otherwise, we will have to pay an unbearable price. When that time comes, it will be too late for regrets. Use people who are virtuous. Use generals who are resourceful. This is not something that we should be emotional about. We must be responsible for the majority of the people. If as a leader you still have to be emotional, then I can only say that you are unqualified. If Emosie's words have offended you in any way, then I ask Grandpa and third uncle to forgive me. However, this is a matter of principle. Please forgive Emosie for not being able to give in. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wu-yi remained silent at the same time. They were both intelligent people, and even though they felt that these words weren't very pleasant to hear, but they couldn't refute the fact that these words were true. As a qualified leader, being merciful and soft-hearted was the biggest taboo. Although they acknowledged that Jun Emosie's words were reasonable, with their characters, they would never do something like that, and would never do it. This was also why they were respectable. Although they were pedantic, they were adorable and admirable. Perhaps this was also the embodiment of human nature. Jun Moxie chuckled and said, "Naturally, this is still our conjecture. As for the final result, it is still a different matter. I just want to remind Grandpa and third uncle in advance. When the time comes to give up, you must be decisive. If you are indecisive, you will be in trouble." Third uncle taught us about the helplessness of the aristocratic families. Today's actions and the decision we make in the future are also the helplessness of the aristocratic families. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wu-yi looked at each other. They were surprised and shocked by Jun Moxie's ruthlessness today. Jun Wu-yi frowned as he pondered. He could not help but think of Jun Moxie's fatal move. His heart shivered. As the second generation of the Jun family, he undoubtedly understood his nephew's position. However, it was difficult for a soldier to give up his comrade in arms. It was just as Jun Moxie had said, helplessness. Grandpa Jun stroked his beard and narrowed his eyes as he thought to himself, I can see through Jun Moxie's character. Although he is somewhat ruthless, he is someone who can wield power. However, he should not be too ambitious. Otherwise, the sky will be filled with blood. Is it a blessing? Is it a calamity? Grandpa Jun was a little worried and could not help but sigh. The old man came from a poor background and was not a true descendant of an aristocratic family. It could be said that he had fought his way to where he was today, step by step. Therefore, he was very kind to the soldiers under him, especially those generals who had climbed up from the bottom. He valued them even more. However, Old Man Jun had 60 years of experience. He had undergone the baptism of political struggles. He was no longer the hot-blooded and courageous man of the past. Moreover, he had lost his son and grandson. Therefore, he had gained a deeper understanding of the ways of the world. Therefore, Jun Emosie's words were more acceptable to him than Jun Wu-yi's. In fact, he even appreciated his only grandson's foresight. Jun Wu-yi turned his head and spoke to Old Pang. Uncle Pang, I will have to trouble you to make arrangements for this matter. No matter what, safety is the most important. Although Old Pang was nominally the steward of the Jun residence and was considered a servant, but in reality, everyone knew that Old Pang and Jun Zhantian were true friends of life and death. Jun Zhantian had never treated Old Pang as a servant. He only treated him as his own brother. In the past, Jun Zhantian had wanted to remove his old brother's status as a servant. Then, he would be rewarded with military merit. Then, he would be bestowed the title of a wife and son. However, Old Pang was sincere about his elder brother. He understood that once he removed his status as a servant, he would no longer be able to accompany his elder brother. Moreover, he would no longer be able to contribute to his elder brother. Therefore, he refused to remove his status as a steward. Therefore, Jun Wu-yi had always regarded Old Pang as his elder. Therefore, he was very respectful towards him. Old Pang smiled and nodded. Then, he got up and walked out. June Mosier couldn't help but shake his head. Although the June family's people were heroic and upright, but they were too sentimental and righteous. Being sentimental and righteous was a great advantage. However, as an aristocratic family, it involved the politics of the kingdom. Blindly being sentimental and righteous was not appropriate. However, June Moxie did not expect his words to be immediately accepted by Old Man June and the third uncle. It was just a temporary reminder. In case of a critical moment, it might be of great use. With the character of this father and son, it would take at least 8 to 10 years of subtle influence to change them. Not to mention that June Dashao did not have the patience to do so. Even if he did not have that much time to waste. This kind of thing cannot be rushed. Let's take it slowly. Suddenly, a sonorous voice rang out. Brother Wu Yi, it's been 10 years. How have you been? The voice was powerful and reverberated in the clear sky under the setting sun. Jun Wu Yi's complexion changed, and his face turned white in an instant. His lips trembled slightly, and he almost jumped out of his wheelchair. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.